What's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name's Matt, and welcome back to I think this is the third year that I've done this, sitting here at this pool table over the Christmas holidays, talking about not this year's movies, which are boring, old, we've seen them, who cares, but next year's movies. This is the time of year where we get to look forward to the things that none of us have seen. So in this video, I'm going to be going over about 130 movies that are going to be releasing, hopefully, these movies are going to be releasing in 2026. So this is my Christmas gift to you. This is my upcoming horizon, films that are exciting me in some way, films that I think we could be talking about for the next year. And there's a lot of presents, a lot of goodies to unwrap in today's video. For the past 2 years that I've been doing this, I've had varying success with it. In last year's video, I got about 5 to 6. To just quickly go through last year's ranking, just so you know what you're getting here today and what hopefully you can expect from next year. So if we were to take my top 10 from last year, I would still have 4 or 5 of those films in my top 10. That being my number 1 pick last year of Marty Supreme, number 5 of Frankenstein, number 7 of Begonia, and number 10 of Sentimental Value. And I might throw in my number 6 of Wicked for Good, which I think is right on the periphery of does it happen, does it not happen? And then you throw in at number 12, One Battle After Another, at number 15, Hamnet. I was way too low on both of those movies, but maybe that'll happen again today in this video. So that is pretty solid for the top 20. And then outside of the top 20, I had at number 58, Train Dreams, at number 89, Sinners. No one could have seen that one coming as an April vampire movie. And at number 101, I had The Secret Agent. In fact, on last year's list, the only film that I would say is currently in the race that I did not list at all is It Was Just an Accident, which that film no one knew existed until the Cannes lineup was announced. So I think pretty safe to say there's not many movies that are going to get past me. Granted, that's what you get when a list goes down to 133, but inevitably there'll be something that plays at Cannes that we just have no way of knowing exists at this point. Let's get right to unpacking some of these goodies for next year. And this is my top 18 right now, and that's 18 films that I feel quite confident at this point our Best Picture winner is somewhere in this top 18. All of these movies have some sort of angle. And something that I feel very different about this year than I have in previous years, I have no idea. I have no strong belief on what is going to win. Last year, I came in here feeling very, very confident in Marty Supreme, and that's not winning. It is getting nominated, it's not winning. But I truly, this year, feel at a loss as to what to call the Best Picture winner, because I think that everything in this top 18 has significant bonuses, significant reasons to predict them, and significant reasons to lean away from them. So I'll go through all of those films and their pros and cons. But right now, just taking a wild, crazy guess, I think that the Best Picture winner could be The Entertainment System Is Down. This is A24's new film from Ruben Östlund, who has been very clear that he is coming for his 3rd Palme d'Or with this. And we know Ruben Östlund, this is a man who he has made a habit out of proving people wrong and out of gunning for awards. And I think that because Triangle of Sadness touched the Oscars last time, I think he's coming for more. He's out for gold. And I feel like not only could we see a record-breaking 3rd Palme d'Or win for Ruben Östlund, who makes films perfectly for that jury of people. He knows exactly what buttons to push. But I think that with this film, which is a satire of people's attention spans, a satire of the modern information age, he could be aiming to push the buttons of the Academy in the right way too. He is an expert of putting together satires that just appeal to the right people. And The Entertainment System is Down, which tells the story of a long-haul flight in which all of the screens break and let loose the chaos of 150 bored passengers. It sounds like a very heavy-handed satire in the same way that a lot of people felt Triangle of Sadness was, but in a way that I think could just hit absolutely perfectly for voters, for people who already have this sort of cynical opinion on what modern audiences are like, what modern attention spans have devolved into. And look, we've had it very good for a very long time in terms of Academy Award winners. This year, likely to be One Battle After Another, possibly Sinners, one of those two. Audiences have loved those films. Anora, Oppenheimer, Everything Ever All at Once. Usually, we don't get a spree of Best Picture winners that are unanimously loved to the degree that we have had in recent years. And so it makes sense for the Academy to swing to something like The Entertainment System is Down, which is sure to be a deeply polarizing film, something that Hollywood elites are likely to really love, but what might leave everyday average audience members a little bit colder. Right now, I do believe that what we get as Best Picture winner next year will not be the unanimously loved sensation that we've been getting for the past few years. I think we're going to get something more like Coda, which is not unanimously agreed upon as a Best Picture winner in the way that we've been lucky to get for many years in a row. But look, it is going to be polarizing, and that could be a big knock against it. And Ruben Östlund has set the bar very high for himself with The Square, with Triangle of Sadness, with films that have been picking up those major festival prizes. It's possible that maybe this one just doesn't do it in the same way that the others have. But if it's not The Entertainment System is Down, I do feel like one of these other options could have something to it. And my number 2 pick right now would certainly be my number 1 had Christopher Nolan not just won for Oppenheimer. So The Odyssey, this is a big summer release. It is a big Greek mythological blockbuster. It is going to do huge things with audiences. In fact, I believe that the trailer just broke records that was released in the past couple of days. I think that it got double, if I'm not mistaken, it got double the views on YouTube that Oppenheimer did in the first 24 hours. I think it was over 120 million views. Now, I don't know where that ranks. I'm sure that there's some superhero movie that's done more than that, but still, for a film from a filmmaker like Christopher Nolan, he's created a brand for himself. He's created this sort of awareness. Now, this one has been getting some polarizing reactions online because people are feeling like it's not historically accurate to the way that Greeks looked at this time period, Greek armor, Greek ships, Greek architecture. So it's been getting some blowback in that way. But at the same time, this is a giant fantasy epic adventure that is going to mesh together prestige and entertainment. This is going to be a huge film that I feel certain in some capacity is going to be at the Oscars next year, likely to be nominated across the board in multiple categories. And I do think if Christopher Nolan had not just won, we would be seeing this as the Best Picture frontrunner. But he just won, and he just won with a massive sweeper. What are the odds that we can get back-to-back films sweeping the season the way that he did with Oppenheimer? That doesn't really happen. I mean, the last time that we had a Best Picture winner repeat was in 2004 with Clint Eastwood for $1 Million Baby. Statistically, the odds for a filmmaker repeating are so incredibly low. And of course, we can look back to The Revenant in 2015, which almost won Best Picture the year after Iñárritu already won for Birdman. It is possible to go back to back, but statistically, it's not very likely. And that's why I'm keeping this off of my top spot at number 2. I also do think that some of the blowback around the historical accuracy, around the design elements of this film, might not help it. And someone brought up a really good point online, which is that Christopher Nolan does a great job of taking science fiction and grounding it in reality. Like Interstellar is a giant space movie where he really focused on the scientific details of it. Inception is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's another movie that takes this grand idea of dreams and sort of brings it down to something realistic and gritty and just real, natural. So the question that I saw someone pose is, how is it going to work when we have something as epic and as big as Greek mythology that leans so heavily into the fantastic? How is Christopher Nolan going to operate in that space? Is it going to come naturally to him, or is he going to lean away from the fantasy elements and try to make it feel gritty and real? I want to see the design of the Cyclops. I want to see the design of the Sirens. I want to see the design of some of these more mythical beasts to see, is he going to ground it in reality, or is he going to embrace the fantasy? And I really hope that he does embrace that, because I'd be a little disappointed if we got an ultra hyper realistic Cyclops. Still, this is one of my most anticipated of the year, and it's one that I think in the right circumstances could be a back-to-back win for Christopher Nolan. Now at number 3, this is going to be a bit of a controversial pick. I already feel people getting their pitchforks out for this one. Michael, the Antoine Fuqua Michael Jackson biopic. The trailer blew up the goddamn internet. People were going crazy over this movie, and I think we're gonna see that continue. This is going to be an audience favorite movie of the next year. This could make $1 billion. People love Michael Jackson. This movie is not going to talk about all of the pedo stuff, which originally it was supposed to. It's now a part 1. So this is going to be the part of the story that's all fun and games and all of the hits. And listen, if you're making a music biopic, you gotta play the hits. You gotta treat it like a greatest hits album. And that's what Bohemian Rhapsody did that was so incredibly successful at the Oscars. It was just a party. You went to that movie and you could sing along and you could remember all of the good times that you've had related to this music. We saw this year with Springsteen, which avoided doing that entirely. That movie has flopped in awards season, and it's because it leaned away from the music and the greatest hits factor of it. But Michael looks like the type of movie that is leaning in 110% into Michael Jackson as the king of pop. And this is going to be a movie that audiences are going to love, regardless of what critics think, regardless of how online people receive this film. I think it's undeniable to me that the casual moviegoer is going to be all over this movie. And honestly, the only thing keeping me from putting this at my number 1 is that I think as an early year release that is likely not to inspire the critics. I feel like as an early year release, you need the critics to keep the conversation going around a film. At number 4, I have Neon's new film, Fjord, the new Christian Mungiu film. Christian Mungiu, not the type of filmmaker that you typically see in awards conversation, but hasn't this been happening more and more frequently recently, where those, not the type of filmmaker we typically see, every year seems to be breaking in more and more. This year, it's Cleber Mendonça Filho and Jafar Panahi and Joachim Trier. And in previous years, Justine Triet, Jonathan Glazer, Jacques Audiard. We've been seeing so much success of these film festival auteurs. And that's partly because the film industry ecosystem has shifted to give these international films a lot more value. As long as Neon is doing what they're doing and buying things out of Cannes and pumping up their value, we're going to see Cannes be the new TIFF in the way that it is pumping out Oscar contenders, even if these are films that typically we would never see in the Oscar conversation before. The new meta for Oscar bait is films that don't care about the Oscars whatsoever. Cannes bait is the new Oscar bait. And so what I see with Fjord, which is a Romanian film about an immigrant family that becomes accused of inappropriate behavior in their new town, what I see here is a movie that critics are going to go all out for, that could possibly pick up awards at Cannes. And if it does, what we've seen recently is any awards contenders, even the least Oscar-friendly movies that place at Cannes, win awards at Cannes, they make it into the Oscar conversation. Surat is one that I walked out of that movie at Cannes thinking, oh, that was great. There's no way in hell that any Oscar voter would ever go for it. 5 shortlists. Fjord, which is a dark and cold film from a filmmaker who's made things like 4 Months, 3 Weeks, 2 Days, Graduation, Beyond the Hills. That feels like the type of movie that Oscars nowadays are going to eat up, as long as Cannes does as well. And with Neon having it on their team already, that to me says that this will be pushed heavily to the jury at Cannes and will be pushed heavily through the rest of the year afterwards. Could this win Best Picture? I'm still on the fence about that. I know Christian Mungiu's other films, like I mentioned before, 4 Months, 3 Weeks, 2 Days, a very dark Palme d'Or winning film about abortion, all set in an afternoon during the procedure, very dark movie. Beyond the Hills, film about people being accused of witchcraft and then basically tortured. Graduation, another extremely dark film. These are not films that are warm or would cause people to say, oh, I'd love to vote for that. It's going to make me feel so good. It's not that type of filmmaker, but he is the type of filmmaker that bangs out critic favorites. And that is going a long, long way in getting nominations now. I don't know if that'll translate to wins, but we'll have to see. Regardless, I think it's entirely appropriate that in my top 4, I have 2 films that I think will be competing for the Palme d'Or, because the Palme d'Or has become the new TIFF People's Choice Award. Anything that ranks up there for that award is now going to be talked about in the conversation for Best Picture. So, factoring that in, I will be talking about a lot more international films today than I have in any of these previous year's videos. At number 5, coming from Warner Brothers, and a film that we just got a teaser trailer released for, this is Alejandro González Iñárritu's new film starring Tom Cruise, Digger. This tells the story of a CEO who desperately tries to convince the world that he is the Earth's savior just hours before a world-ending event that he has set in motion. He is the grave digger. He is the one who is digging for cash, trying to scrape every last bit of money out of the world while also leading to the extinction of the human race. It sounds like a big don't look up type of satire, a film that I think the Hollywood type of voter is going to watch and is going to fall head over heels for. This is not going to be a subtle satire. This is going to be angry, and it's going to be a little on the nose, but it's one that is likely to be cinematically spectacular. We've seen Alejandro González Iñárritu make films that have been a little bit on the nose before, which have done incredibly well at the Oscars. Birdman, one of my favorite films, that is not the most subtle of films in what it's talking about, but it's a film that performed extremely well with the industry types that it was targeting, and Digger, I think, is going to do something very similar. It knows its audience, and it's going to go for its audience full throttle. Now, I don't like the new name. I don't like the imagery of Tom Cruise carrying around a shovel. I think it's cheesy, I think it's cheap, but I'm willing to wait and see what Iñárritu has in store for us. He's a filmmaker that has proven himself time and time again. And even with Bardo, a film that was supposed to perform all the way up here and performed all the way down here when it came to the Academy Awards, I think the difference is that was clearly a passion project. He went back to Mexico for that film, which was a reflection of dreams and memories, and it was a very surreal type of movie. This seems to be much more in line with Birdman, The Revenant, as a film that seems explicitly commercial, seems to be really going for the American public. I can already see the Variety headlines calling this the most timely film of the year, the movie that we need right now. That could lead for it to be a big player across the board. Also worth noting, this is Tom Cruise's first foray back into serious roles after his stint as a longtime blockbuster actor. He is really going for this serious credit. He wants to be taken seriously. And Tom Cruise is someone who I think is very careful with the scripts that he chooses. I would be very surprised if this was another weirdo art piece, the same way that Bardo was a few years back. I'd be very surprised if Tom Cruise would sign up for a project like that. He is a movie star, and I think that he knows that this movie is going to use his movie stardom while he uses the movie's serious credit to maneuver him into the next part of his career. So the way I feel about this one, it could be a little too on the nose, but I really feel like all the pieces are here to make this one of the biggest movies of the year. Like I said before, the movie we need right now, the movie the world needs, a reflection of today's America. And the next film coming from Searchlight Features, number 6, is Wild Horse 9, Martin McDonagh's new film. McDonagh, most known for both The Banshees of Inisherin and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now the question here, can he three-peat on this? Now early word is this movie is really goddamn good. It is one of his career best to this point. It's funny, it is violent, it's dark, and it's still somehow pretty life-affirming. I've heard comparisons on this one to A Real Pain, but with a little bit more of that McDonagh dark comedy flair to it. And I've been hearing that John Malkovich is absolutely magnificent in this movie. Now, this looks to be Searchlight's main contender this year. It looks to be a film that's going to premiere either in Cannes or in Venice and could carry that buzz through the rest of the year, the same way that 3 Billboards did, the same way that Banshees of Inisherin did. Martin McDonagh has done it time and time again with serious subject matter that he has twisted in a funny and very entertaining way. Seems like he's going to be pulling that trick again with this one. But that said, if this is not better than Banshees by a mile, if this is not better than 3 Billboards by a mile, I don't see this doing what those movies could not do and winning Best Picture or winning Original Screenplay. I do think it's possible that there is an Oscar in its future for one of the actors, specifically John Malkovich. At number 7, here's another movie like Digger that we just recently got a trailer for. This is Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's new movie, which is a throwback to his 70s films. Does this look more like an action blockbuster than some of his recent work that's been getting Oscars attention? Absolutely. This is far closer to Ready Player One, to War of the Worlds, than it is to The Fabelmans or West Side Story. But Steven Spielberg is one of those filmmakers where I feel like if he wants Oscars with a film, he's going to get nominated for them. He has that stature, he has that level of fame, that level of notoriety where every single movie that he makes is a major deal. Even if audiences are not going to see them the same way that they used to, it is a big deal in the industry anytime he releases a new movie. And Disclosure Day looks like a throwback to his earliest films. This is Close Encounters of the Third Kind all over again. This is E.T. all over again. It is doing what he did best as a young filmmaker. Now at the very end of his career, he's looking back at his 70s films. He's looking back 50 years and thinking, what can I bring now to that kind of movie? If this movie is spectacular, there could even be a Best Picture angle for a win here. Steven Spielberg, one of our greatest filmmakers, has only won one Best Picture prize for Schindler's List. And how fitting would it be to give him Best Picture 50 years after Close Encounters of the Third Kind? There is an argument there. I also feel like it is foolish to predict a filmmaker like Spielberg, who has such an incredible career, to win Best Picture, because there's always going to be people watching his films and saying, well, he used to do it better than this. That's always going to be a thing with Spielberg. It's why he struggled to pick up wins for The Fabelmans. It's why he could not win for West Side Story. He's a filmmaker that is just so storied that no matter what he does, people are going to be a little disappointed. There's no pleasing everyone at this point in Spielberg's career. But I do think that this is a film that could perform exceptionally well with critics, exceptionally well with audiences. This could be one of our big crossover hits of the year between blockbuster status and critical acclaim. I personally think the trailer looks fantastic. I've seen a lot of people disagree with me on that, but this is surely one of my most anticipated of the year and makes a lot of sense for awards. At number 8, Denis Villeneuve has Dune Part 3 releasing later this year. Now, he had great success for Dune Part 1. 5 wins, 10 nominations, I believe. Slightly less great success for Dune Part 2. 5 nominations, 2 wins. Now, are we going to see that downward trajectory continue for Dune Part 3, or are we going to see this loop back around and do a Lord of the Rings Return of the King? That's not going to happen. I hate when people make that comparison. That's not going to happen. We're never going to see a Lord of the Rings Return of the King again, especially not for an adaptation of Dune Messiah, which amps up the weird factor about 100-fold from the first Dune book. This is going to be a strange movie, but it is going to do a few things right. It is going to be spectacular. It's going to be technically gorgeous. It's going to hopefully make a buttload of money. All of those things coming together should be enough to secure this as an Oscar player in some way. But granted, we've just seen with Avatar, the first movie got a ton of nominations, a bunch of wins. The second movie got less nominations, less wins. And now for the third movie, which is currently in theaters, we're on track for just 1 or 2 nominations, no Best Picture. Could we see the same trajectory for Dune Part 3? I think that's a lot more likely than a Lord of the Rings Return of the King trajectory for it. So we're going to have to see where this one ends up. Is the fact that it's adapted from a much weirder book than the first book, is that going to impact this movie in the long run? Is that going to push voters away? Have they seen enough of Dune? Are we just going to have it sort of spiral down a little bit? Possibly. Now, another film adaptation, which is sure to be a big audience hit, but I don't know how I stand on it for the Oscars, is Greta Gerwig's new film, Narnia, the Magician's Nephew. This is coming from Netflix, although Netflix has promised this is going to get a wide IMAX release. They are treating this like a big blockbuster film that goes into theaters, that spends time in theaters. And of course, the return to Narnia is really exciting. Narnia has never been a series that has been big for the Academy Awards, but Greta Gerwig is a filmmaker who has gone 3 for 3 in terms of her solo-directed films. Lady Bird, Little Women, Barbie, all 3 of those movies have gotten Best Picture nominations. And I think it's pretty safe to say that as Narnia is one of this year's biggest event films, it's going to be in that conversation too. Granted, though, this is based on The Magician's Nephew. This is a Narnia book that has never made it to the big screen, partly because it's not one of the most well-received Narnia books. This is a prequel, sort of the genesis story of the world of Narnia. It's set before the events of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it concerns the creation of the world of Narnia. It's a bit of an odd book. It's not the same type of crowd pleaser, family-friendly action fantasy adventure that some of those following Narnia books are. This is not The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This is not Prince Caspian. It's not The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. This is going to be likely a little bit more dry. It's possible that Greta Gerwig has big plans for this one, has a reason that this is the movie that she's adapting in the Narnia saga. But at this point, I am a little bit more hesitant about this film. I don't know if this is going to be the surefire big hit that we would expect from someone like Greta Gerwig doing a franchise as big as The Chronicles of Narnia. And I do have fond childhood memories of The Magician's Nephew, even though I think most of my memories of this book revolve around me going, that felt weirdly religious. I don't think that's the angle that Greta Gerwig is going to take on this one, but still, should be an interesting film to see where this goes, what this does, if Netflix stays true to their word of giving this a big IMAX release. Now, rounding up my top 10, I have another non-English language film coming from one of the big studios, and that is Possible Love, the new Lee Chang-dong film, which is being released by Netflix. And how crazy is that? Lee Chang-dong, the filmmaker behind Burning, the filmmaker behind Secret Sunshine, Poetry, all of these wildly acclaimed films. He's releasing a film through Netflix, which is, I think Netflix is just really hungry for South Korean content, and the fact that they're funding the new film by a master like Lee Chang-dong, that's really exciting. That is really, really cool that they're just giving him carte blanche to do whatever he wants. That also does mean that Possible Love will not be going to the Cannes Film Festival, as they have a disagreement between Cannes and Netflix, barring those movies from competition. So this is likely to be a Venice Film Festival premiere, and judging by Lee Chang-dong's track record, especially Burning, if you've got a film that's likely to be one of the highest acclaimed films of the year, and you have a platform like Netflix that's going to put it in front of everyone, it's going to be inescapable, that's a surefire way to make a film connect. Train Dreams is doing an amazing job at this right now, which Netflix put the film in front of the right people. It's been getting that traction, and critics have been loving it and pushing it harder and harder and harder. That's a film that I think easily could have been completely forgotten over the course of the year, that Netflix has just done the right thing with. And Possible Love, I think, is likely to follow in those footsteps as a critically beloved film. Maybe not the most popular, because it's not designed to be the most popular, but a film that just keeps picking up those awards because the critics love it, and it's on the biggest platform. It's inescapable. That said, this type of movie really benefits from being at Cannes. This type of movie would really benefit from being a contender for the Palme d'Or. This type of movie needs that buzz. If it goes to Venice and it doesn't win one of those top prizes, it could be in trouble. It could be deprioritized the way that we've seen No Other Choice. Another South Korean film that critics loved, audiences loved, performed extremely well at TIFF, didn't make those Venice prizes, and because of that has sort of been pushed back in the ranks of its studio's priorities. Netflix has quite a lot of movies this year. Possible Love could get lost in the mix. But then again, you'd think the same about Train Dreams, and Train Dreams has cut through all the noise. So that's why I have Possible Love here at 10. I'd love to have it a little bit higher, but we don't have any plot details about this film. We really know nothing about this. We just know Lee Chang-dong's previous work of Burning, Poetry, Secret Sunshine, all of these films that have been huge, huge hits, but have also been a little bit colder, a little bit harder to get into, a little bit harder to access those stories. Lee Chang-dong is not Bong Joon-ho. He is not Park Chan-wook. He is a filmmaker that takes his sweet time, that lets stories slowly develop and become something that lingers with you for weeks afterwards. But Burning is not Parasite, and Possible Love is likely to be much closer to Burning than it is to something like Parasite. So this could be a big swing and a big miss, but you know what? I'm willing to take a big swing on a filmmaker like Lee Chang-dong. At number 11, I have Project Hail Mary, which is releasing, I believe, in March of this year. This is the new film by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, famous for the Lego Movie, famous for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which they didn't direct, but they did write and produce. Their fingerprint is all over that movie. Also did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street. These are filmmakers that have been churning out hit after hit after hit, but have not made an Oscar movie yet. And I think that Project Hail Mary could very possibly be their foray into that fray. Everything we've heard from test screenings so far has been through the roof. Apparently, Ryan Gosling gives career best work. It's very funny. It could be a massive audience hit from the looks of it. It's also based on a book by the writer of The Martian. This film just has all the right pieces. It is also a March release, and it is also coming from Amazon MGM, who has routinely fucked things up. Now, at the moment, I have this hanging outside of my top 10 because I just don't know, no matter how big this movie is, no matter how much audiences and critics love it, I just don't know if it's going to be able to hang on from March all the way until next Oscar season. I don't know how I'm going to be recalling it next year when we're talking in the same place. Is Project Hail Mary going to be the early year favorite that just does well with audiences and then kind of drops off the map? Or is it going to be a film that Amazon successfully leverages into something that critics are taking seriously, that the industry is taking seriously? I don't know. I feel very confident that people are going to love this movie, but they could love it the same way that they loved The Fall Guy, to use another Ryan Gosling movie as an example. It could be fun, light entertainment that sort of leaves people's minds by even a few months later. But right now, the test screenings have this one sold for me. There's also, at number 12, Aaron Sorkin's sequel to The Social Network, The Social Reckoning. This is coming from Sony Pictures, and it is, unfortunately, not only dropping David Fincher, but dropping the entire original cast of The Social Network. So when I say that this is a sequel to The Social Network, that is very loose. The only thing continuing from The Social Network to this seems to be Aaron Sorkin. We're not going to get that iconic Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score. We're not going to get those incredible performances by Jesse Eisenberg and Justin Timberlake and Andrew Garfield and Armie Hammer. This is losing all of that continuity, but it is a juicy, juicy story. For years now, people have been saying that there is so much material you could use to make a sequel to The Social Network. The Social Network, which covered the first 5 or 6 years of Facebook's development. I mean, it's been 15 years since The Social Network came out. There has been a lot of development in terms of how social media has shaped and destroyed the world. When The Social Network came out, Facebook was still this cute little thing that you could actually connect with people on. We didn't even get to the part of history where Facebook and social media in general basically shaped an election and shaped the comeback of the far right across the world. It's very likely we're going to be seeing some of these big political topics talked about at length in The Social Reckoning, things that are essential to the story of social media, to the story of Facebook. Jeremy Strong is going to do a great job with it. Is he going to be the Jesse Eisenberg version of Mark Zuckerberg? No, it's going to be different. And I think overall that's going to be a big thing for and against this film. For people who are looking for The Social Network 2, this is likely to be pretty disappointing. But it could also really resonate with voters who maybe don't hold The Social Network in as high regard as I feel like, that's kind of gotten Citizen Kane status as the film of an era, the film of a generation. But for people who don't hold it at that high of esteem, I feel like this could really be that movie of the moment that I referenced earlier with the new Iñárritu film, especially releasing around the time of the 2026 midterms. We saw that work wonders for Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of the Chicago 7, which released in 2020, right before the election. But I do feel very confident that it's not going to do as well critically or commercially as The Social Network did before it, and that could be a big mark against it. At number 13, a film that I'm really excited for because this is my favorite Jane Austen story, Sense and Sensibility, a new film coming from Georgia Oakley, who previously did the film Blue Jean, a very strong British independent movie. She's been given a big budget to make a new adaptation of Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. This one stars Daisy Edgar-Jones in the lead role, and a big cast of young British talent. We've also seen that Sense and Sensibility has been one of the most successful Jane Austen stories at the Oscars before, specifically with Ang Lee's 1995 adaptation of the book. This could be the new era adaptation of this old story that could really capture audiences, something that feels fresh and new from a filmmaking voice like Georgia Oakley, who could bring something new, something fresh, this sort of British social realism angle to a classic British period drama. Now, it does release in September. That's never a great omen for a possible awards player, but we've seen in the past couple of years, there have been September releases making it into Best Picture. One Battle After Another this year, September release. Last year, The Substance. Maybe next year, our September release that makes it into the Oscars against traditional knowledge of how these awards races go, how these awards releases go. Sense and Sensibility could be the one to do it. At number 14, a film that I am unreasonably excited for on a personal level, despite the fact that I didn't really like this filmmaker's previous film, Beanpole. Not a huge fan of Beanpole, but Butterfly Jam from filmmaker Cantemir Balagov sounds magical. Where my real anticipation comes from for this movie, Jomo Frey, the cinematographer of Nickel Boys, is shooting Butterfly Jam. Butterfly Jam is Cantemir Balagov's first English language film, and it tells the story of a young man of Russian descent who wants to be a wrestler, but is sort of dealing with the expectations of his very strict Russian family in New Jersey. The story sounds interesting, it sounds personal, and could be something that we really haven't seen before. This fresh take on an old genre of the wrestling movie. Cantemir Balagov, after making Beanpole a few years ago, which although I'm not a huge fan of it, is a very technically accomplished, beautiful film, and it feels like something that the Oscars would have really responded to if it was in English. Now, this one is in English. But Cantemir Balagov said that he was sick and tired of the film industry, and he announced his retirement despite being a very young artist. And after coming up with the idea for Butterfly Jam, he decided, you know what, screw it. I'm not retiring after all. I'm not quitting film. I am going to make this movie, and it seems like there could be something calling him to the material, could be something that indicates that this is a really special project. This is also a film that I would expect to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, possibly in competition. And again, if that's the case, if this does win a prize at Cannes, we should be taking it extremely, extremely seriously. Is number 14 a little bit high for this one? Absolutely it is. I have a hunch that this is going to be our indie film darling of the year. This could be a big, big critical success. At number 15, this is a film that I would like to have a lot higher, but there are reports that Pavel Pawlikowski's new film 1949 could be releasing in 2027 instead. They are currently shooting the film. They started in October. They're likely to finish in January. That feels like it could be ready by the end of the year. But granted, there are a couple of Polish sites that have reported that they're aiming for a 2027 release. So this is the only reason why I have Pavel Pawlikowski's new film outside of my top 10. I would love to have this top 3 because I think Pavel Pawlikowski is one of those filmmakers that is just waiting for award success. He is just waiting to have his Alfonso Cuarón moment. He's waiting to have his Iñárritu moment, his Del Toro moment, which is fitting because he is the fourth amigo. Paweł Pawlikowski is a Polish filmmaker. He was nominated for Best Director in 2018 for Cold War. He's the type of filmmaker that is just poised for a big breakout moment. In 1949, which is a road trip through Germany in the aftermath of World War II, following Thomas Mann, one of the great German writers. It sounds like a film that's both political and personal, and as we know from Paweł Pawlikowski's films, it's going to look frickin' stunning. This just sounds like it has all of the right elements to be the big awards breakout that Pawlikowski has been waiting for the past 10, 15 years of his career. He did win an Oscar for his film Ida before, so he's been on that trajectory for a long time. We're just waiting for him to get his first Best Picture nomination. I think it will be 1949. The question really just is, does it release in 2026? Or 2027. And if it's 2027, you bet your ass I will be back here next year in this video, putting this in my top 5. Number 16, Tom Ford returns to the screen after 10 years of absence since his last film, Nocturnal Animals. He comes back with Cry to Heaven, which is currently unrepresented. There's no distributor on board for this film, and this sounds like something that could be right up the alley of the former head of the House of Gucci, a fashion icon who has also made his mark in multiple other art forms. Tom Ford is a visual master. He's someone who makes everything look spectacular. And Cry to Heaven is based on a book set in 17th century Italy following the story of two castratis, men who were castrated as young boys in order to keep their angelic singing voices. This book that this is based on sounds pretty dark and a little bit fucked up. This does not sound like an easy topic. Honestly, if I just heard the slight byline and hadn't read through the entire Wikipedia description of the book, I'd likely have this a lot higher up. Tom Ford doing a period piece in 17th century Italy based around the story of castratis, that sounds like it could be a massive, massive player. But reading more of what the story is about, ooh, this could be polarizing. But it's likely also to be one of the most beautiful looking films of the year. Tom Ford is another one of those filmmakers we're just waiting to have his moment. Now, he makes so few films. This is only his third film, but A Single Man, Nocturnal Animals, both of those films were on the cusp of those big Best Picture nominations. Honestly, Nocturnal Animals probably should have been in the Best Picture race. Cry to Heaven could be his breakout moment, but again, that story, it's just a little much. This could be next year's The Testament of Anne Lee. Number 17, Robert Eggers is releasing another Christmas Day horror movie next year, just as he did last year for Nosferatu, which was a bit of a big Oscar shock. I mean, that movie didn't get into Best Picture, but it did get into almost all of the tech nominations that it was gunning for, which means that Robert Eggers is on the trajectory of making something that gets him into Best Picture, that gets him into Best Director. Werewolf is apparently his darkest film yet, and it is another period piece. This time, it's about a werewolf instead of a vampire. We know very little plot details outside of that, but we do know, based on Robert Eggers' previous work, it's going to be visually magnificent. It's going to have an incredible attention to detail, and it's going to be seen with a level of prestige that this type of film typically does not get. People see Robert Eggers' movies as period pieces first, and his horror movies second. And I think that is going to be a big mark of success for his films going forward with critics and with industry voters. The question is just how much of Nosferatu's success was based on the fact that that was an established property, that people knew the story of Nosferatu, the story of Dracula, and that allowed the film to be taken more seriously on its own merits. Perhaps the fact that that was based on the Bram Stoker story gave it a little bit more room for people to take it seriously, whereas Werewolf seems to be an entirely original story. He's starting from the ground up here. At worst, this is another tech player. At worst. At best, this could be the Best Picture breakthrough that we're waiting for, and the last film of the big Best Picture contenders, the films that I could see winning the top prize. This is the new Joel Coen film, Jack of Spades. Unfortunately, the Coen brothers seem to show absolutely no interest of going back to being the dynamic duo that they once were. But at this point, it's pretty fair to say Joel Coen is the serious one. Ethan Coen's the goofy little guy. Ethan Coen has made a collection of weird, goofy movies that sort of don't go anywhere near the Oscars, while Joel Coen made The Tragedy of Macbeth, which was likely in the top 15 for Best Picture. It was a very serious film, one of the best movies of 2021. And Jack of Spades is another dark and serious film. This is being described as a gothic mystery set in Scotland in the 1800s. It stars Josh O'Connor, Frances McDormand. From the sounds of it, the set is big. They are doing a lot of work in transforming Glasgow into its 1800s self. Interestingly, this one doesn't seem to have a distributor yet. It's likely to be a Cannes debut, hopefully. Although Joel Coen was rejected for The Tragedy of Macbeth a few years ago, this could be one of our big breakouts from this year. One of those films that we're looking at a year from now thinking, God, why did that not have a distributor right off the bat? Now, granted, that could be a bit of a red flag, could be a little bit of a showcase that no one is willing to take the jump on this one, that it might be a little bit too dark, too serious, not having a lot of commercial appeal. And bam, that is the top 18, but there is a lot more to talk about. At number 19, we have another Searchlight film coming from Tony Gilroy, the mind behind Andor, Michael Clayton, former Best Picture nominee. So Tony Gilroy's new film is Behemoth. This film stars Pedro Pascal and Eva Victor, and though there are very few plot details from it, it seems to be a drama film, a very serious film about a cello player. Tony Gilroy is someone who is on fire at the moment. I feel like people really doubted that Andor was going to be what it was. Having him back in the hunt for an Oscar, making something that isn't part of a franchise, that isn't one of the Bourne movies, that isn't Star Wars, I feel like he could be on a really strong trajectory here. We just don't have a lot of details about this one yet, but still, coming from Searchlight, being Tony Gilroy, all of it has me feeling pretty positive about the prospects of this film. And another film which is likely to debut at the Cannes Film Festival is Minotaur, which is the new film by Andrei Zvyagintsev, who is a Russian filmmaker twice nominated for the Oscars. I believe only twice, maybe more, but definitely for Leviathan and Loveless, not to mention his Venice Golden Lion winner, The Return, which is one of my favorite films of all time. Zvyagintsev was supposed to have a film last year called Jupiter, but that got scrapped due to health concerns. But apparently he has actually filmed Minotaur. It's in the can, and it seems to be gunning for a Cannes release. And if this one is going to Cannes, we can surely believe this will be one of the most highly acclaimed films at the festival. The story byline that we've got so far from this is that an entrepreneur who is about to lay off all of his employees discovers that his wife is having an affair. There's not a lot to grab onto there, but Zvyagintsev has been very well known for the darkness of his stories, the sort of dry humor around the seriousness of the topic at hand, as well as the technical prowess and the carefulness of the craft in making these films. Again, he's had back-to-back Oscar nominations for his previous films, and it's likely to believe that Minotaur, if it's as strong as Loveless, as strong as Leviathan, could break into the Best Picture race in our modern Oscar climate. At number 21, and some of you might call me crazy for having this low, others might call me crazy for having this high. This is David Fincher's new Netflix movie, a spin-off of Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is The Adventures of Cliff Booth, a film with a screenplay by Quentin Tarantino, directed by David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt in his Oscar-winning role. All of that could be a recipe for major success. On the other hand, it is a spin-off. We don't really have a good sense of how needed this film will be. We also don't have a good sense of how is David Fincher going to work with a Quentin Tarantino script. Is this a match made in heaven, or is this straight from film bro hell? All of that's yet to be seen, but this is definitely going to be one of the most anticipated films of the year, if only just for the oddity of a movie like this existing. Do I expect this to reach the highs of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Absolutely not. I think that if this script was as good as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino would have made it himself. On the other hand, David Fincher is David Fincher, and can we doubt him? I'm sure that if he agreed to make this, there's got to be something to it. There has to be some reason that this project actually made it to the finish line. And so this is a big wild card for me this year. Is it going to be huge, or is it going to be nothing, just light entertainment for Netflix? I don't know which one it is. I feel like at worst, this will turn out like The Killer, which is a film that performed very well on Netflix but did not make it into the awards conversation. That's kind of where I feel like this one will land as well. This is not going to be Mank or The Social Network. Might not even be Gone Girl, but it is going to be a really fun watch. And at number 22, a filmmaker who had a spree of Oscar success that has kind of fallen to the wayside for good reasons. David O. Russell went from his spree of The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, to a few flops and quite a bit of time off. Joy, Amsterdam, and just really not being a major factor in awards conversations since his run of hits in the early 2010s. But his new film, Madden, is based on quite a strong script and boasts a heavily made-up Nicolas Cage playing the football legend. Is it a bit weird to see a filmmaker like David O. Russell take on a film about football, and not just a film about football, but a film about developing a video game about football? Absolutely. That is a really weird match. And do I think that this is going to be much closer to David O. Russell's Joy than it is to The Fighter or Silver Linings Playbook? But I can attest, I like the script for this movie. I think it is a very strong script, and I don't give a shit about football. Madden feels like this year's Ben Affleck's Air. A film that is going to really click with a certain type of people, but it might not make it to that industry level. Alternately, this could just be another Amsterdam and have critics absolutely hammer it into the ground because David O. Russell is persona non grata. David O. Russell is frequently known as one of the worst people working in Hollywood. He's a relic of an old time where it was completely acceptable, if not encouraged, to scream at your team, to scream at your talent, at your crew. This man apparently makes life for everyone on set into a living hell. That is an attitude that I think was left behind in the early 2010s when he was successful. The Me Too movement did not just boot out the sexual predators from the industry, but it also booted out those people who really used their power in malicious ways. And I think that David O. Russell is one of those filmmakers. Now, granted, I have heard rumors, allegations about sexual misconduct from him. I can't speak to those or the validity of those. I don't think he's been tried for anything, but there has been so many reports of his just shittiness in just general attitude on set. And I do think that has hurt his status as a filmmaker. I think that will hurt Madden the same way that it hurt Amsterdam. People don't want to see him succeed. And again, for good reason. Number 23, we have the return of Sean Heder coming back with Apple TV Plus. They're reuniting after the success of Coda back in 2021, a little film that was not supposed to do what it did. Being Human tells the story of a disability rights activist, self-described mother of the disability rights movement. This is based on her own book. I believe that she passed away in 2023, so she's not around to see this film be made. This could be a really sweet, timely portrait of an important movement. Alternately, this does kind of sound like the type of Oscar bait that we don't really see succeeding anymore. We don't see a lot of those big biopic movies or big serious issue movies. Specifically, we don't see the feel-good approach of this kind of movie make it through. We see a lot of this kind of Oscar bait done with a more auteur filmmaker, which Sean Heder, I don't really think we can call. Still, with Being Human, there is still quite a chance that Sean Heder could recapture what she captured for Coda and do something that feels just genuine, feels just real. That's what the magic of Coda was. It wasn't that it was a beautifully done auteur film, it was that it felt real and authentic. And if Sean Heder can recapture that, telling this story, maybe this could be our feel-good movie of next year. At number 24, we have Pedro Almodovar's new film, Bitter Christmas. After he made one English language movie, he has returned to Spain. The Room Next Door seemed like a film that was going to be his big Oscar breakout, but maybe, just maybe, his big Oscar breakout, his Best Picture breakout after years and years of his films getting Oscar consideration, but not in the main category. Possibly what he needed was a brief foray into Hollywood, and now coming back with Bitter Christmas. This is premiering in Spain in March, which means it's likely to bow in France in May at the Cannes Film Festival, the same way that Pain and Glory did in 2019. An early year Spain release, and then debuting on the Croisette. He has teamed up with Sony Pictures Classics. Again, they are the distributor that has really handled all of his films. And the question here is just, is this going to be another Pain and Glory level success? If he makes another Pain and Glory, then yeah, absolutely he can be in Best Picture conversation. In fact, I think outside of 2019, most years, Pain and Glory would get into Best Picture. But Pedro Almodovar is an exceptionally high and low type of filmmaker. And it's possible that this is more The Room Next Door, more I'm So Excited. A film that still does well with critics, is liked, but just isn't that type of movie to carry the prestige that something like All About My Mother or Talk to Her or Pain and Glory received. It could go either way for Almodovar. Is this going to be seen as important enough in his filmography? I mean, he won the Venice Golden Lion, and that was not seen as important enough of a film for him that it could propel him into the Oscar conversation. At number 25, a film that I am personally really excited for. This is Hirokazu Korieda's first of two films on this list, and this is his adaptation of the manga Look Back. Look Back is going to sound familiar because just last year it was adapted into a fantastic animated film. One of the best animated films of 2024 was Look Back, which is the story of two young artists who dream of having successful careers drawing and writing manga. It's a deeply emotional story, takes some surprising narrative turns, which I don't think everyone will love, but it is widely acclaimed and it's beautifully, beautifully done. And I think in adapting this to live action, there's no better filmmaker to do this than Hirokazu Koreeda, someone who finds humanity in all of the darkest places. Koreeda is another one of those filmmakers that is just waiting for his moment to break out. And a story like Look Back that has already been tried and tested in film form, maybe, just maybe, this could be the breakout moment that he needs to have at the Oscars. Alternately, this is an adaptation of an anime, of a manga. We have not seen this type of movie perform well at the Academy Awards before. So maybe if Hirokazu Koreeda does have his breakout moment this year, it won't be for this one. It could be for his other film, which I'll talk about in the next 10 movies. I'm just going to be interested to see which of his two films plays at the Cannes Film Festival. Possibly both could, but the question then to me is, which one is in competition and which one is out of competition? And I would lean towards his other film being the competition film, and Look Back being the out of competition film, seeing as it is an adaptation of an anime and a manga. But still, this is one of the most exciting films coming out of the East this year, and it's a beautiful story. And frankly, I'm going to rank the film that I know more about a little bit higher than the film that I know less about. We know that Hirokazu Koreeda is going to make everyone cry. At number 26 is James Gray's Paper Tiger. The buzz around this one feels similar to the buzz around every other James Gray movie. It's the best James Gray movie that he's ever made. We heard the same thing about Armageddon Time, about The Immigrant, about The Lost City of Z. All of these movies, always the buzz is, this is James Gray's best. It's this one. We are going to see James Gray break through to the mainstream this time around. And it never really happens that way. Granted, Paper Tiger has a really great cast, and it sounds pretty interesting. This is a Russian mafia story starring Adam Driver, Miles Teller, Scarlett Johansson. Great cast. And again, I feel like James Gray is gonna keep making really good movies, and eventually something will probably hit. Is it gonna be this one? I don't know. I would not bet on this one, but something's gonna hit eventually, and this is likely to, I keep saying it, this is likely to play at Cannes, and if it goes to Cannes, gets great reviews, wins an award, then I don't see why this wouldn't be a big contender. But there's all the steps that it has to get to before then, and we've seen so many James Gray movies follow this same trajectory and not end up being the winner at the end of the day. James Gray is one of the most go-to-Cannes, win-nothing filmmakers of the past, 2 decades. It feels like he's always there and he's always not winning. I'm not going to count on this one, but it definitely, if it does break James Gray's curse, picks up a prize at the Cannes Film Festival, then I'm riding with this one. Number 27, another Cannes contender. This is The Man I Love, coming from Ira Sachs. And this is the first, I believe, of many musicals on this list. There's a lot of filmmakers this year that are making musicals who don't typically make musicals. The Man I Love stars Rami Malek as an actor living in New York City in the 1980s. During the AIDS epidemic, he decides to take on one last role in a musical. Ira Sachs is a great filmmaker. He's done some beautiful films, and I feel like in the right circumstances, with a film that seems to tackle a big subject matter in an awards-friendly way, being this sort of musical exploration of the AIDS crisis, I could definitely see this breakthrough. But Ira Sachs is also not the type of filmmaker that really goes big with his stories. He loves a small treatment of a big subject matter. So I would actually say it's likely that this is not as spectacular a film as it sounds like it could be. It could be much more intimate and small and sweet. This could be next year's The Mastermind, as a film that is just really, really respected, but just isn't the type of movie that wins these big awards. And keeping us in the theater, number 28, I have Chinonye Chukwu's new film, Death of a Salesman. This is an adaptation of Arthur Miller's classic play. It's starring Jeffrey Wright, Octavia Spencer, and the big selling point here, aside from Chinonye Chukwu, who who did Till, who did Clemency, is the fact that Tony Kushner is co-writing the screenplay. That's Tony Kushner of Angels in America, of Spielberg's West Side Story, of Lincoln. He is doing a new version of Death of a Salesman. The thing that I feel overall is that every year, it feels like we get a big adaptation of a classic play, and we always try to convince ourselves this is going to be the one that brings theater back to film. This is going to be the one that breaks the curse that's going on at the moment. I mean, we did this with The Piano Lesson. We did this with Hedda last year. Long Day's Journey into Night is another example of a big famous play. That movie hasn't even come out yet. It just feels like lately we've been getting these big adaptations of theatrical masterworks, which just feel too stagey in the end to actually be big awards contenders. If this is a truthful adaptation of Death of a Salesman, it's not going to come near the Oscars. And if this is not a faithful adaptation, if this is really breaking Arthur Miller's play and making it more cinematic, making it different, then I also don't see this as an Oscar contender, because then it's going to be seen as sort of defacing a classic work. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I feel like we could get some really strong performance contenders from this one, but at the moment I don't see Death of a Salesman as the big overall contender that I think a lot of other people are currently ranking it to be. That's why I have it down at number 28. Number 29, the second musical on this list, is the untitled Jesse Eisenberg directed musical. Now, Jesse Eisenberg, just coming off of A Real Pain, he's got the heat behind him. He went from When You Finish Saving the World, a film that really wasn't discussed all that much, I think it was much better than people gave it credit for, to A Real Pain being one of the biggest movies of 2024. And his new film is a musical comedy, which is being described as being about the high-stakes world of community theater, which is ridiculous and fun, and I can't wait for this one. Now, does this sound as serious as A Real Pain was, which I feel like got as far as it did because it had that undertone of speaking about the Holocaust, speaking about generational trauma. I don't think that this is going to handle the same big topics the same way that A Real Pain did. But granted, Jesse Eisenberg is on fire right now, and if you get him the right music and you give him this sort of goofy Waiting for Guffman-esque story, it could be a really big hit. At number 30, The Death of Robin Hood. This is an A24 film directed by Michael Sarnowski, who did Pig, who did A Quiet Place Day One, both very, very strong movies. He went from Pig to a big budget horror movie, and he kept his style through that. You really feel like A Quiet Place Day One. It's not just another entry in the Quiet Place franchise. Like, it does feel like it's from the same filmmaker that made Pig. And Pig was a film that I think made it a lot further than anyone would have expected to, from just hearing about this unknown filmmaker making a movie about Nicolas Cage and a truffle pig. Nicolas Cage was likely on the next few in line for a Best Actor nomination that year. Michael Sarnowski, at some point, I believe, is going to make a big contender. The question is just, is it for The Death of Robin Hood, which is seemingly, from the photos that have been released, a dark, gritty version of the Robin Hood story, where Robin Hood is at the end of his life and he's looking back and thinking about his legacy, and it's dark and it's moody. And I don't know if that's really gonna sell. This kind of looks like the Green Knight to me, a film that I really love. I think that The Death of Robin Hood could be really strong, but it feels a little too brooding, a little too moody, a little too, ooh, we're gonna make something dark, but it's still gonna be fantasy. I don't know if that blend with this genre, this sort of high fantasy, but make it edgy, I don't know if that's something that the Academy is going to love, but this is one that I could definitely see pick up steam with critics if it really does land. And I think that this will just be a stepping stone on Michael Sarnowski's path to eventually make something that is an Oscar contender. This is only the second A24 film that I've talked about, I believe. Correction, third because the Jesse Eisenberg movie is also A24. But still, this being in the current top 3 of A24, I feel like that means that really that could shift around. This could become more of a priority than I currently think it is for A24. And if it is, then I mean, Hugh Jackman, Jodie Comer could be really strong players for awards. Now at number 31, Ryosuke Hamaguchi has a new film coming out. It's likely to go to the Cannes Film Festival, and you already know what I'm gonna say about that. All of a Sudden is the new Ryosuke Hamaguchi film. It's set in France, stars Virginie Efira. It's a film that sort of blends together what we've seen in Ryosuke Hamaguchi's work in Japan. It's going to blend that sort of Japanese sensibility and the sort of Parisian milieu that he's been working in as an art house filmmaker. So much funding comes from France. This is a film that follows a Japanese director. I don't know if it's a director for the stage or for the screen. Either would be fitting for Hamaguchi, who meets a French nurse in a hospital as they bond over mortality. We know that Hamaguchi is always going to deliver hits with the critics. It just is a matter of, is this going to be a big enough film? Is it going to feel relevant enough to get him back into the conversation after Drive My Car? Drive My Car being so undeniably loved by the art house crowd. Is All of a Sudden going to be that beloved? At this point, I would lean, if Evil Does Not Exist was not that big, then maybe this won't be either. But still, Hamaguchi sort of making something different, transitioning into a new place to make films, into a new culture, into a new environment. That's really exciting, and I can't wait to see what he does with it. And regardless of what this does with the Oscars, this is just a movie that exists above the Oscars. This is not a film that is going to need that awards consideration to be one of the most important and exciting films of the year, because Ryosuke Hamaguchi is just one of those filmmakers who anytime he makes anything, it's essential. Number 32, Ben Affleck has a new movie with Netflix titled Animals. Now this one does kind of sound like Ben Affleck is much more in his The Town or Gone Baby Gone type of filmmaking than his Argo. It is a crime thriller about the son of a mayoral candidate who's kidnapped, and the candidate for mayor has to very quickly find a lot of money to pay the ransom without word getting out about what has happened. It's a kidnapping, high-stakes crime drama. It sounds like it's a movie that's built for Netflix's top 10 instead of the Oscars top 10. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that usually some of the most fun movies of the year are that type of movie that just get released and kind of fade into the content void. And it always sucks because there's always films each and every year that deserve more attention. This is likely to be very fun. Am I sure about it being an Oscar contender? No, it doesn't really sound like it's made for that purpose. But that doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile film to talk about, to be excited for. And back at number 25 with Look Back, I talked about Hirokazu Koreeda's second film that's coming this year. That is Sheep in the Box, number 33. Neon has the rights to this film as well, which is a sci-fi movie about a couple who adopts a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence child. This could be a really interesting dissection of the family unit through the eyes of AI, through the eyes of robots, and what it could mean to raise a child, to love a child who is not human. And Koreeda has been a master of the family drama, and I think he could bring a really interesting perspective and a very dynamic perspective to a sci-fi story like this. This sounds very similar to what we saw with Shoplifters, what we saw with Like Father, Like Son. He's made an entire career off of these moral question family dramas. And honestly, you could flip this and Look Back's spot, and it would kind of still make sense. I feel like this is one of this and Look Back are gonna play in competition at Cannes. And honestly, probably more likely this one coming from Neon and not being an adaptation of an anime. Sheep in the Box would be a very strong contender as well for that Cannes to Oscar trajectory. I mean, Hirokazu Koreeda, it's going to happen for him at some point. He just needs to have a film be a big contender, not a monster level contender, but again, a Shoplifters level contender. If Shoplifters came out in the past couple of years instead of in 2018, I think we would have seen that film get nominated at the Oscars for more than just international feature. And at 34, our first contender I'm talking about that has already been seen. Actually, I think it might be the only contender that I'm going to talk about that has already been seen, because a lot of the other films that have been seen that are holding over till next year, Late Fame, Nirvana the band, the show, the movie, we kind of know they wouldn't be Oscar contenders in any year. We know we can scratch those off of the list, even if people are still anticipating them. I'm still anticipating Late Fame. I've seen Nirvana the band, the show, the movie. I think it's fantastic. Not an Oscar movie. But I have not seen The Rivals of Amziah King yet, which is coming from Black Bear next year. It's a film that I think a lot of people, for a long time, too long, I might say, held on to The Rivals of Amziah King. It's a Best Picture contender and a contender everywhere else. I mean, the reviews are there. For sure the reviews are there. Why this film was not bought for such a long time, I don't know. I can't say. I have no idea why this film kind of just sat in limbo. Was it just Black Bear wanting to hold on to it so that they could be the ones to eventually release it? Maybe. But if that's the case, why not? Why not take it to any fall festivals? Why not release it? I mean, they just released Christie out of nowhere. Why not give The Rivals of Amziah King the release that they gave to Christie? Who knows? I don't really know, but we know that this movie has spectacular reviews, and it is one that I feel like could make a big resurgence if they play their cards right this year. We haven't heard about an exact release date for The Rivals of Amziah King. I could see them pull a Sound of Metal, where Sound of Metal debuted at TIFF 2019. Amazon held on to it and held on to it and held on to it, and then just released it at the right time in 2020, and suddenly it's in Best Picture. Maybe, just maybe, Black Bear could be brewing the perfect campaign for this movie. I am not going to say it's impossible. I think it would be a little foolish to predict it the way that people were predicting it earlier this year, but it's not impossible. There have been stranger things that have happened with films just like this one. If this gets a fall festival release next year, then maybe be on the lookout for it. Be watching for what Black Bear does. Maybe they're just waiting to build momentum, waiting to build the correct publicity campaign. But if Black Bear just drops this in March or April or wherever in the summertime, then this movie is dead, dead, dead. Number 35, I have Terrence Malick's new film, The Way of the Wind, which has been on every list that I've done. When is this movie going to release? Who fucking knows? We don't know when Terrence Malick is going to put out his long-time passion project, his Jesus movie. It could be this year. We could also be waiting for 5 more years. There's really not a huge reason to keep talking about The Way of the Wind. I'm kind of feeling like it's been edited to death. So even if it does end up hitting Cannes, I don't see any way for this one to live up to the hype that has been garnered around it. It feels like one of those movies that is always going to be bigger and better in concept than it could possibly be in reality. So to me, even if this movie does come out, I don't expect a Jesus movie to do huge things in 2026. Number 36, Emerald Fennell has a new Wuthering Heights movie with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. And early word from Warner Brothers insiders, the same Warner Brothers insiders who were saying, guys, Sinners is the real deal. You got to watch out for Sinners. Those same sources have been saying Wuthering Heights slaps. It's really good. I'm a big fan of Promising Young Woman. I'm less of a fan of Saltburn. I don't really think that's a very good movie. But Wuthering Heights is my favorite piece of Gothic literature. Will I be heartbroken if it's absolutely slaughtered by Emerald Fennell to make something pop weirdness. Maybe, yeah, I think that would hurt a little bit. But granted, it could be stylish and fun and bring a new life to this story. Also, I don't think Jacob Elordi is terrible casting for Heathcliff. He could do a very good job with the role. Honestly, I think Margot Robbie is the worst casting of the two of them. I have sort of avoided watching the trailer for this one. I kind of just want to go in and be surprised. But I do think that there is an angle for Wuthering Heights to be Warner Brothers' big movie that just hits across the different demographics. This is a film that could be a huge Valentine's Day date movie, which kind of just keeps that cool factor going all year long. I could see the internet really going crazy over this one, keeping it alive. I mean, the internet did their best to keep Saltburn alive in its year. They love Emerald Fennell's stuff. And so sometimes that's the publicity campaign that you need. You need the internet, you need social media talking and talking and talking about a movie endlessly. And I'm pretty damn certain that Wuthering Heights is going to be talked about. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we're yet to see. But it's definitely going to spark a lot of conversation. At number 37, my first Sundance movie of the list, I believe. And this is a bit of an odd pull, but it's a film that I think really stood out in the competition lineup here. This is Run Amok. Run Amok is a directorial debut that's playing at Sundance, and it stars Alyssa Marvin, someone who really hasn't been a big star yet. It's directed by N.B. Major. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but what the Sundance programmers wrote about it has such enthusiasm, and this seems like a film that's going to push people's buttons in a way. It seems dangerous and really stylistic, as well as being on a very hot button topic. Essentially, this is a musical about a school shooting, which sounds absolutely crazy, and it is crazy, but the idea behind it is that a high school student who is a survivor of a school shooting ends up writing a musical to perform at the school about the worst day in that school's history. It sounds weird and possibly very funny and possibly uncomfortable in a way that confronts us, that really makes us think about this subject matter and the normalization of this subject matter, the way that teenagers just live with this as such a fact of life, that making a school musical, a big cheery musical about school shootings, feels like something that could just be normal to a group of theater kids. I don't know if this is going to be a big contender or what, but reading through the Sundance lineup, this is the movie that stood out to me. This is at least from the competition, the movie that I feel like sounds like one of those indie breakout sensations. We'll have to see. Maybe this is not the breakout sensation that I'm expecting it to be, but I will say that I put one of last year's competition films on my list, and it was Sorry Baby. Maybe I'm onto something here, or maybe this is just nothing. It's probably way too high up, but if I'm gonna have one Sundance competition movie, this sounds like it hits the right buttons. Number 38 is Danny Boyle's new film, Ink, which is a biopic about Rupert Murdoch, the founder of Fox News. Danny Boyle, great filmmaker, 127 Hours, Slumdog Millionaire. Has not been making Oscar movies. He's kind of just been focusing on other things. I mean, last year he made 28 Years Later, a very strong sequel to that horror franchise. And Ink sounds like his first time in quite some time trying to make something that could be an awards contender in some way. This is going to be a very interesting film in terms of investigating the impact of legacy media, the impact of Fox News, and the way that it sort of shaped truth in the world and the way that people consume media, and how Rupert Murdoch essentially used this network as a way to control the thoughts and the minds of the voting populace. Danny Boyle is a filmmaker that I think can pull off anything. I mean, Steve Jobs is a movie that I still go back to as one of the most unique and exciting biopics. Ink, I feel like could be really big. It just also is a film that we haven't heard as much about. I didn't see a distributor attached to this one yet, so maybe this is just one of those movies that's floating around as a potential. I think they've filmed it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those movies that I'm talking about next year, that it just didn't come out this year. And maybe it'll be a bigger contender once we know for sure this is coming, this is happening. At number 39, we have the continuation of Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley working with Netflix. Greg Quaidar is back directing Saturn Return. Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley have been this dynamic duo trading off who's directing, who's writing. And they went from Sing Sing being a huge, huge hit, a lot of people feel should have been in Best Picture last year, to Train Dreams, which at first seemed like a film that when it played at Sundance, people were just like, oh yeah, it's a really good movie, but if they couldn't make it in for Sing Sing, they can't make it in for this. And it seems like Train Dreams might actually be able to make it happen, might actually be able to make it work. Now, Saturn Return is Greg Quaidar taking back the director's chair and working with Netflix from development for the first time. Charles Melton stars in this one, and it's being described as a large-scale romance movie. I will say that the description from what I've read, it's not grabbing me in the same way that Sing Sing, Train Dreams, those are movies that feel like they're really about something. This feels a little bit looser, a little bit more airy in terms of what it's about. It could be a great film, but it's not feeling important in the same way that Sing Sing or Train Dreams did, just right off the page. But maybe I shouldn't be doubting Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley. Maybe these guys are just going through it. They're just year after year going to be churning out things that ends up in the Oscar conversation. But for now, I'm just going to say this is a little bit lower of a contender. When this starts making the rounds of the festivals, is this getting the same reviews that Sing Sing or Train Dreams did? Now, granted, I didn't think that Train Dreams was going to be the contender that it was. I had it ranked 58 on last year's list, I believe. So putting this at 39 is a bit of an upgrade. At number 40, I have the untitled Damien Chazelle prison movie starring Daniel Craig. This has not yet started filming. I feel like I read somewhere they're aiming to start filming early this year. And if what Chazelle says is true, it's a much smaller movie. The scale is not Babylon. It's more of a Whiplash type of movie that's contained and small and has that sort of indie sensibility to it. If that is the case, then I feel like this could make it out by the end of the year. There really is a possibility that this just does not make it out this year. If that's the case, then 40 is a good spot for it. But if the movie is to release, I would definitely bump it up a lot higher. Damien Chazelle is one of those filmmakers that no matter what he makes, people are going to be talking about it. I feel like you have a free pass for life once you've made Whiplash and La La Land back to back. Those two movies are a free ticket into any Oscar conversation from now on. Even if he made a few films that did not hit the same way, even if First Man was a bit of an Oscar flop, even if Babylon was an Oscar flop, he is always going to be in the conversation because of that 1-2 punch of Whiplash and La La Land. Number 41 is Matt Johnson's movie Tony. This is coming from A24. It is the Anthony Bourdain biopic starring Dominic Sessa. Matt Johnson is one of my favorite filmmakers working nowadays. I think he's just so effortlessly goddamn funny. Blackberry was incredible. Nirvana the band, the show, the movie was incredible. He is just pumping out funny and smart indie films. And this being his first foray into American filmmaking, I feel like this could be a really special one. One of my teachers was on set working on this movie, had nothing but good things to say about it, seemed to just love working on the film. Although I have also heard from Matt Johnson through mutual friends that the experience of making this movie was not always a pleasant one. A little bit of a struggle between the creative team and the financial team. Apparently it kind of felt like they were being squeezed dry a little bit. Matt Johnson works best with those restrictions, works best when, he's working at like a micro budget level. And this being a bigger budget movie, I feel like he would be able to adapt. I have definitely heard, though, that it was not the most pleasant experience for him. I'll also say that I feel like any movie with Matt Johnson currently would struggle on the awards season race. I don't know how Matt Johnson is going to do with the publicity route. I feel like his sarcastic attitude and the sort of energy that he brings around, this sort of prankster energy, I feel like is going to be antithetical to awards season success. He does not seem to be the type of person that would entertain any of this nonsense or showmanship. Now, I say that, and he was a major source of campaigning for Blackberry for the Canadian Screen Awards. That's a very different thing. We'll have to see. See Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. It's not ranked on this list because it's not going to be an awards contender, but it is, I think, the first 10 out of 10 movie of 2026. Number 42 is At the Sea, the new film by Cornel Mundruczó, a great Hungarian filmmaker whose films have been in the awards conversation in the past, specifically 2020's Pieces of a Woman starring Vanessa Kirby, which landed her a Best Actress nomination. He has been a mainstay at the Cannes Film Festival for like 15 years now. White God, Jupiter's Moon are really interesting and exciting. Now, At the Sea stars Amy Adams as a woman who retreats to her family's beach house while dealing with addiction, I believe. It sounds very The Outrun, the Saoirse Ronan movie. It doesn't sound like the most exciting or engaging storyline, but Cornel Mundruczó is a filmmaker that is always worth talking about. He's going to make a movie that gets this recognition at some point. Will it be At the Sea? I'm not sure. Something I do feel confident about, Amy Adams, this could be a big role for her. This could be something that launches her back into the awards conversation, regardless of whether the movie itself is. Amy Adams, hopefully this will be a bit of a revitalization of her career. At number 43, we've got another untitled movie, like we had Damien Chazelle, Jesse Eisenberg. We've got untitled Mike Leigh. Apparently it's been greenlit, apparently they have been shooting it, but as per usual with Mike Leigh, we don't know what the story's about. We don't know who's in it. We don't know anything about these movies because he sort of discovers that as he shoots. The films are put together by a troupe of actors. Usually, bit by bit, they just come together. He doesn't really go into things knowing exactly what he's doing. He just starts with a theme and evolves from there. Hard Truths was a film that probably should have gotten more nominations than it did, should have gotten that original screenplay nomination, should have gotten in for Marianne Jean-Baptiste. That film was kind of robbed all over the place. It deserved much better than it ended up getting. But the question here is just, is this going to be another Hard Truths, or is this going to be another Peterloo? Is Mike Leigh going to be completely back in his element? Is he going to be going to Cannes, picking up these prizes? Or is this going to be another film that kind of just falls by the wayside, gets rejected, ends up making a TIFF premiere the way that Hard Truths for some reason did? For some reason, Cannes and Venice didn't want the movie, even though it was really, really strong and seen as one of his best in quite some time. I don't understand the logic behind those film festivals, but Mike Leigh is getting to the end of his career. He's an old man and he's struggling to make movies. He's struggling to get his films funded, specifically because of the unconventional way that he makes them. Because it's risky. You never know what you're gonna get. Hopefully this movie actually does get made this year, but regardless, I'm just happy that there is more Mike Leigh on the horizon. He is one of our great filmmakers and should be given carte blanche to do whatever he wants. It's really sad that he's had to fight for funding the way that he has been. At number 44, Taika Waititi's Clara and the Sun. This is adapted from a Kazuo Ishiguro novel. It stars Amy Adams, Jenna Ortega. I believe Jenna Ortega plays a robot named Clara who exists to provide companionship and friendship to a young girl. And it's an interesting piece for Taika Waititi to be taking on, because when I think of Kazuo Ishiguro, the writer behind The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go, I don't think of the sarcastic wit of Taika Waititi. Taika is not writing the script for this one, so there's going to be less of his signature comedy, his signature wit, his signature sarcasm. It's not going to be in this movie in the same way. So I'm just curious if he's going to be able to tonally balance this one. I feel like he can recover from Next Goal Wins, from Thor Love and Thunder. Hopefully he can recover and make something as good as Jojo Rabbit. I don't know if this is going to be the one, but I feel like Taika Waititi is not a name that we can just let go of in terms of Oscar conversation from now on. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles something that perhaps could be a little bit more serious than his previous work. Number 45, coming from Netflix, is Robert Zemeckis' new film, The Last Mrs. Parrish, starring Jennifer Lopez. And this tells the story of a con artist who plans to marry into money by splitting up a couple that's been together for a while, only to uncover a much more complex relationship and a much darker secret behind. I had a teacher of mine who was on set for this one. He said that it seems to be a really fun movie. Apparently J-Lo is really milking this role for everything it's worth. That said, Robert Zemeckis, let's look at his track record over the past 10 years. Here, criminally underrated, didn't expect it to be, it was very good, but he also has stuff like Welcome to Marwen, The Witches, and just, I think he also did, oh my god, he did the atrocious Pinocchio live-action remake for Disney. Robert Zemeckis has not been bringing out the bangers, and this one seems like I said with Ben Affleck's Animals, could just be meant for the Netflix content pile. A movie that's going to be fun and is made for the top 10 of Netflix, but might not be the big contender that he would have made in the 1990s. We'll have to see. I'd love to see Robert Zemeckis make a comeback. At number 46, Felix van Groeningen is doing a film called Let Love In. He did Beautiful Boy with Timothée Chalamet. He also did The Eight Mountains, which played at Cannes a few years ago. And this is likely to play at Cannes as well. It's a relationship drama about a couple in the aftermath of an affair and the sort of relationship unraveling. This is going back to Belgium, making the film in the Dutch language. The Eight Mountains, I believe, was Italian, which is not the language he typically works in. Beautiful Boy was an American film, again, not working in his typical language. We have to go back to stuff like The Broken Circle Breakdown, which got an Oscar nomination, is one of my favorite movies. And Felix van Groeningen is someone that I think could make a big contender. Granted, he's not the type of filmmaker that gets that critic love out of Cannes, even if he does get the awards love, the jury love. The Eight Mountains, I believe, won the jury prize, but it wasn't one of those films that was latched onto by critics as one of the best movies of the year. This is not a storyline that is really blowing me away or drawing me in. It doesn't feel undeniable, and I think that this is a filmmaker that we need to see take on a subject matter that is really undeniable, but still, I'm very excited for Let Love In. Number 47, Artificial, Luca Guadagnino's new movie. And Luca Guadagnino, look how far you've fallen. Last year, I had After the Hunt ranked number 3 on this list. Dear God. One of my least favorite movies of this past year. Oh man, Luca Guadagnino. What's going on, man? He's working with Amazon MGM again, the distributor that's been taking on almost all of his films except for Queer lately. And Artificial tells the story of Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, ChatGPT, and it follows a dramatic moment in that company's history where he was let go from the company briefly and then rehired as CEO a few days later. Maybe this is biased speaking. I don't give a shit about ChatGPT. I don't give a shit about AI. I don't want to see a movie about AI. I don't care about any of this. And I don't see why the industry would either. And to be honest, I don't have the most faith in how Luca Guadagnino is going to treat this subject matter. I think, honestly, After the Hunt felt so snarky and sardonic in its approach, and it just felt genuinely kind of hateful and really dismissive of the people that it was talking about. I don't feel all that confident that Luca's take on AI is going to be anything more than just the coldest take imaginable. I'm worried about this film. I feel like I might lose the respect that I have for Luca if he takes this in the way that I fear he might take it. But we'll have to see. I don't know. Maybe it's just going to be another boring business movie. Not every movie can be The Social Network, and we've seen so many films try and fail at replicating what The Social Network did so brilliantly. And this to me just feels like a failed version of The Social Network. We're gonna see though. Maybe Luca can prove me wrong. I mean, I loved Challengers, and that was at a point where I didn't expect Luca Guadagnino to do something that resonated with me. And then since then, he's kind of just been disappointing me again and again. So maybe he can prove me wrong, but I'm not feeling big on this one. Number 48 is Frank and Lewis. This is a film from Petra Volpe, the director of Late Shift, currently on the Oscar shortlist for Switzerland. Frank and Lewis is playing at the Sundance Film Festival. It stars Kingsley Ben-Adir and Rob Morgan. It's set in the prison system following a man, played by Kingsley Ben-Adir, who tries to get a lighter sentence by working with Alzheimer patients. He's paired up with Lewis, who's played by Rob Morgan, someone who formerly was one of the most intimidating inmates in the prison, someone who was very respected, led a bit of a prison gang, but now is suffering from early onset dementia and is sort of losing his mind. So what we've got here is two really strong actors, a filmmaker who's coming straight off of an international feature contender, playing at the Sundance Film Festival, and tackling some extremely sensitive and important subject matter. I mean, this is a prison movie about Alzheimer's. Like, how much baitier could you possibly get? But Petra Volpe is not a filmmaker that has really impressed me yet. I thought Late Shift was a very underwhelming film. But granted, this is probably one of the bigger films that will be coming out of Sundance. It's got that hot button topic, it's got two really strong actors, and it's got a filmmaker who is garnering some buzz right now. So all of that could be the perfect storm to make this next year's Train Dreams. Number 49 is Christopher Borgle's The Drama, starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. A24 is releasing this in April, and you bet your ass if this was not releasing in April, I would have it a lot higher. Zendaya and Robert Pattinson play as an engaged couple who reveal some unexpected things in the lead up to their wedding, and things seemingly start to fall apart. It could be really strange, especially from a filmmaker like Christopher Borgle, who just came off of doing Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage, highly underrated movie. That film is a lot of fun and it's incredibly imaginative. He also did Sick of Myself, which was a very strange and exciting movie, sort of body horror, coming of age comedy. Christopher Borgle is one of those filmmakers that I just can't wait to see whatever he does next. He is a very exciting person to watch, and to see him working with actors like this, it's really exciting. I wish that this was not coming out in April so that I could have it higher than number 49, but at the moment, I'm just gonna keep it down here. I feel like this, at best, is this year's Eddington, as like a movie that just kind of comes and goes and captures the hearts of some people, but just isn't meant to last. Number 50. Wow, not even halfway through the list. Oh my god, I gotta start moving faster through this. Number 50, I have The Wait. It's another Sundance movie, and this is the one that I see a lot of people talking about when they say, what are the big contenders from Sundance next year? Obviously, the film starring Ethan Hawke and Russell Crowe looks like it could be a big awards contender. I'm a little bit lower on this one than some of the others I've spoken about, Frank and Lewis or Run Amok, mostly because the storyline for this isn't grabbing me. It's really just the pedigree of the actors. You've got Ethan Hawke and Russell Crowe in a period piece. Ethan Hawke is getting so much buzz right now for Blue Moon. He could ride that momentum, but honestly, I'm just not... The storyline's not capturing me. What do I have written down here for the story? See, this is one of those movies, I can't even remember what it's about. Yeah, I didn't write down notes here on the storyline, and it's escaping my mind. So many other movies I don't have notes written about, and I can recall them. I literally read the description of this movie yesterday, and it's already gone from my mind. Maybe that says something about this movie. I don't know. I just know it's a period drama. It stars Ethan Hawke. It stars Russell Crowe. It's not standing out as something that's gonna last for the year, which is why it's all the way down here at number 50. Number 51, Hope, directed by Na Hong-jin. This is a South Korean movie. I believe it's an alien invasion movie. It's been rumored at the Cannes Film Festival for a couple of years. It's unclear whether this is going to be a part 1, part 2 type of thing, or if this is going to be one film. But it does star Alicia Vikander and Michael Fassbender, two Europeans who, in a South Korean town, are fighting an alien invasion. Na Hong-jin made The Wailing back in 2016, a highly acclaimed cult classic horror film that has really stood the test of time well, and people are talking about him as potentially this big player, this genre filmmaker who could make the leap to being seriously considered at the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, Cannes has been doing this for years, where they take very silly films and give them the awards consideration, give them the sort of pedestal, the platform of being taken seriously. I mean, would we have ever expected Coralie Farja to go from Revenge, this gory feminist action rape revenge movie that premiered at TIFF Midnight Madness, mind you, would we have ever expected that filmmaker to then premiere her next film at Cannes and go on to be a Best Picture and Best Director nominee? It's amazing that that happened, but Cannes takes risks on movies sometimes. So maybe this South Korean alien invasion movie with Alicia Vikander and Michael Fassbender, maybe, just maybe, that could be this year's Cannes breakout genre title. Number 52 is Primetime, the narrative debut of Lance Oppenheim, a documentary filmmaker best known for Sperm World and Some Kind of Heaven, one of my favorite documentaries of the 2020s so far. A great filmmaker who really tackles interesting subject matter and does it in an unconventional way. And Primetime sort of follows in the footsteps of what last year's Predators documentary did. This is a biopic of Chris Hansen in the era around To Catch a Predator. And Robert Pattinson is playing Chris Hansen in a cast that also includes Phoebe Bridgers. A weird mix of things here. It sounds really interesting, and it could be a little too weird or a little too daring or a little bit too much for people. But regardless, I can see at the end of next year this being one of A24's movies that people just can't stop talking about. People can't get off their mind. It's a difficult subject matter to talk about, I think. It's a difficult, I mean, Predators was a documentary that really wades into some difficult moral territory. And I think that this film, if it does it right, I mean, you can't make a To Catch a Predator movie without really addressing some of the darkness behind that show. So we're going to have to see if this really confronts us, makes us sit in the uncomfortable moral questions. The best part of that documentary is how it really does make us sit with some of these uncomfortable questions. But I also don't know how a biopic could do that in the same way that a documentary could. I'm not sure. Regardless, this is an exciting prospect. Number 53, Rosebush Pruning. Now, we've had 2 years in a row of Brazil's success. Could this be the third? We had Walter Salles break through to a Best Picture nomination. We're on the periphery of potentially Kleber Mendonça Filho getting into Best Picture contention. And here we've got Karim Ainuz, one of Brazil's most interesting, dynamic filmmakers. Rosebush Pruning is not a Brazilian film. It's not a Portuguese language film. This is Karim Ainuz working, I think, for the first time. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Oh no, he made Firebrand. He has made an English language film before. But anyways, Rosebush Pruning is another English language film. It is based on Fists in the Pocket, an Italian film directed by Marco Bellocchio. This tells the story of a young sociopath who gradually plots the murder of his entire family. Kind of psychological thriller in the same realm as Saltburn. It's one of those films where I'm thinking, what could hit Cannes? Rosebush Pruning is up there at the top. Karim Ainuz, he's a staple at Cannes, but he's not a filmmaker that has been really making those waves. He hasn't been getting the love at Cannes from the awards, from the juries. Firebrand, Motel Destino, Those have not been the big contenders that we were sort of hoping that they would be at the festival. So we're gonna have to see, could this break through, or is this just another Motel Destino? Number 54, See You When I See You. This is the new film from Jay Duplass, who just last year made his first film in about 13 years with the Baltimoreans. The Duplass brothers were fixtures of the indie mumblecore movement in the 2000s and early 2010s, and then they just sort of decided to completely pursue acting for a while, to stop directing movies. But Jay Duplass is back. He's making films as a director again. When I saw him speak about the Baltimoreans, he really is talking about his return to filmmaking as a return to his first love. He blends together humor and sadness and in this melancholy, beautiful way. I think it's a matter of time before he makes a film that really connects on a deeper level. And the cast of this one, Cooper Raiff, Caitlin Dever, is really, it's exciting. It's based on a memoir of a comedian who was grappling with the death of his sister and sort of put it all on paper. And that is the story that this film tells. It's about a comedian who loses his sister and deals with grief through that. This could be a big Sundance hit, potentially could be a breakthrough moment for Jay Duplass. Number 55, Asghar Farhadi's Parallel Tales. This is an anthology movie in the style of Magnolia, tons of different overlapping stories, all taking place during the 2015 Paris terrorist attacks. I don't know about you guys, this does not sound very appealing to me, like a sort of multi-tiered drama all taking place during terrorist attacks. It's not singing to me. It's not something that sounds overly compelling. I love Asghar Farhadi. I feel like his time should have been with a hero. I mean, he had a separation which got him an original screenplay nomination, and then for the 10 years after that, he kind of just sat in the same place. He did have that whole plagiarism scandal, which I don't know how that resolved. I can't recall if he was absolved of wrongdoing there. Asghar Farhadi, I think his moment came and went. He's a 2-time Best International Feature winner at the Oscars, but I don't feel the same need to award him in the industry. I don't feel like his new movie is being hotly anticipated to win big prizes. The thing that I've seen people criticize Asghar Farhadi for is that he works so much within the oppressive system. I mean, you've got filmmakers like Jafar Panahi, Mohammad Rasulov routinely going to prison for their beliefs, making films that stand up against the state, that refuse to work within the constrictions of the repressive government. And meanwhile, you've got Asghar Farhadi, who is just very happily making movies within that system. Now, granted, Parallel Tales is set in France. It is entirely an ensemble of French actors, so that criticism doesn't really apply here. But I don't know, something to me just doesn't feel right about Asghar Farhadi as an Oscar filmmaker currently. It would be weird for him to get that level of love, that level of attention, just 2 years after The Seed of the Sacred Fig, just 1 year after it was just an accident. But again, maybe the fact that this is a French movie, not an Iranian movie, will change things, will make it different. But I don't know, this premise is just not doing it for me. It doesn't seem like this is going to be a big movie for Asghar Farhadi. It's gonna play at Cannes. I could see it be the opening film at Cannes. Feels like that type of movie. Number 56, Andrew Haigh has a new film, A Long Winter. Andrew Haigh, coming off of All of Us Strangers, that was a film that I feel like was kind of taken for granted by awards. It was not given the respect that it deserved. A Long Winter is his new film starring Fred Heschinger, and it's being released by Mubi. This tells the story of a young man whose mother disappears into a blizzard, leaving him and his father to cope with her loss. If All of Us Strangers, with some of its big topics, couldn't make it into the Oscar conversation, I don't know if this one will. Andrew Haigh is a very subtle filmmaker, very small filmmaker. And while All of Us Strangers tackled some very big topics in a very subtle way, this one seems to be taking on very small topics and it's going to do it in a very typically Andrew Haigh, small and subtle way. I feel like he is a filmmaker that will have his breakout moment. I don't think it will be for this one. It sounds like it could be a great film, but it just sounds very small. Number 57 is Olivia Wilde's new movie, The Invite, premiering at Sundance this year. It is sort of a chamber piece between 4 actors. It's Olivia Wilde, Penelope Cruz, Seth Rogen, and who's the last one? Edward Norton. Edward Norton's the last one. And this is a screenplay that's being written by Rashida Jones and her long-term creative collaborator, Will McCormick. They were both shortlisted for the Oscar pretty recently for their documentary film, and they've written films like Celeste and Jesse Forever together. This is sure to be a very funny, interesting movie. Olivia Wilde had big things happen for her with Booksmart, and then Don't Worry, Darling happened, and that was not a big thing. Now, it seems like after the sort of disaster of Don't Worry, Darling in the press, Olivia Wilde is going to a very small film. Again, it's just a chamber piece about 2 married couples having a dinner date, having a dinner party together. This could be her Bradley Cooper Is This Thing On moment, where she's not caring about this being a big thing, getting the big attention. And maybe this is just really a movie that's meant to be for her and her friends to make something together. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Number 58 is The Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. And you might laugh at me even having this on the list, but look, The Hunger Games is a very good series. It's routinely making a buttload of money, and it's one of those series that has a sort of crossover appeal between it's young adult fiction, but people take it really seriously. Everything I've heard about the book Sunrise on the Reaping is that this is spectacular. This is one of the best books in the series. I haven't read this one. I was a diehard fan of the books when I was a kid, but I've heard great things about this one. And maybe, just maybe, this could finally be the Hunger Games movie that breaks through into some of those tech categories, costumes, production design, and it's got a great ensemble around it. And they've been marketing the hell out of this movie early. The Hunger Games is more worth mentioning than some people might read it as. I think putting it on this list is very worthwhile because there's always a possibility that, maybe one of these movies just blows everyone the hell away and we get it into awards conversation in some way or another. Personally, I think that The Hunger Games and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire both should have been in awards conversation in their respective years. I have high hopes for this one. Number 59 is the new Paul Greengrass movie, The Uprising. The Uprising is coming from Focus Features, stars Andrew Garfield and Woody Norman, and it's about a peasant uprising against the British Crown in 1381. Woody Norman, the kid from Come On, Come On, is playing the King of England, I believe, because the king was like 14, 15 years old at this time when he had to quell a peasant revolution. Paul Greengrass, a bit of an inconsistent filmmaker lately when it comes to awards. I mean, News of the World was a film that had buzz to get into the Best Picture conversation. It ended up getting a few nominations, but not as many as were expected for it. And then he's also making stuff like The Lost Bus, which just completely comes up short, does nothing in the end. His trademark shaky cam, docu-realism style, I don't know how that's going to play in a story about 1381 England. It's going to be very interesting to see if he pulls it off. Paul Greengrass typically does really well when he's working on that fresh from the news type of story, like Captain Phillips, like United 93. It's going to be very interesting to see how he adapts to a story like this. Granted, we have seen the example of this with News of the World, that being a Western starring Tom Hanks as a cowboy who basically takes the news around the West and reads stories to people across old Western towns. And so maybe that could be a bit of a sign of what Paul Greengrass is going to do with this film. But at the moment, coming off of The Lost Bus, I'm not feeling like Paul Greengrass has the momentum where he needs it to be to get this movie in. I don't see him going back to Captain Phillips level success anytime soon. The same could be said for another filmmaker who has had great success in the past and has kind of just been making kind of slop for a few years. That's Ridley Scott, whose new film, The Dog Stars, is coming from 20th Century. This is a March release sci-fi epic film about the aftermath of a flu that devastates the world's population. It stars Jacob Elordi, Margaret Qualley. We're at the end of December. We have not seen marketing for this movie that comes out in 3 months yet as a big blockbuster that's meant to hit the major movie theaters. And it's coming from Ridley Scott, who, again, has just been on a streak of subpar shit. I mean, House of Gucci, Napoleon. Sorry, Dylan, I know you love Napoleon. It's not good. Gladiator 2 is just, oh, God. Ridley Scott has not been making good movies lately, and The Dog Stars is not speaking to me as a movie that's going to change that. Now, just a note here, this is an interesting part of the list because I'm bouncing between movies that I'm really excited for that I don't think are going to be awards contenders and movies that I really am not excited for. Remember, take it with a grain of salt. Because a film is this low does not mean I am not looking forward to it. In the case of The Dog Stars, I am not looking forward to it. But in the case of some of the other films that we're going to talk about here, just because it's low doesn't mean I don't think it's going to be a good movie. Remember that, okay? Lock that in. Please, lock that in. My positioning of a film on this list does not indicate the quality that I think that this film will have. Sorry, y'all, I'm getting delirious now. It's now past midnight. Merry Christmas, by the way. It's December 25th as I'm recording this. Number 61, Tenzing. This is coming from Apple TV+, and it is a story about the Sherpa who helped lead the first expedition to the top of Mount Everest. This is coming from a documentary filmmaker who previously has only made films about Sherpas and about the community around Mount Everest climbing. So she's working really in her wheelhouse, telling this story for her directorial debut in a narrative film. This could be a really big movie for Apple TV Plus next year. I mean, I feel like Mount Everest is gonna do really well on streaming and telling the story behind the climbers. This is sort of a decolonial perspective on climbing Mount Everest from the perspective of the Nepalese Sherpas, who really are the unsung heroes of any expedition to the top. This, I think, will be a big audience hit. I think in a year's time, I could see this being your mom's favorite movie on Apple TV+. Number 62 is God Is, coming from Amazon MGM. This is from Alicia Harris, a renowned playwright, and it's based on her own play that I think they debuted this off-Broadway. It's a really dark story about two girls who are convinced to murder their father, who they have been told is responsible for their burned faces. When I heard the title and some of the reports of the footage that they showed at CinemaCon last year, I was kind of expecting something to be like a little bit cheesier, a little bit more of like an inspirational type film. But no, this sounds like a really dark psychological drama. Sterling K. Brown plays the father figure that the girls go off to try and murder. Regardless of how good this movie is, it's Amazon MGM. It's also another one of those films, like I was saying earlier, it's adapted from a play. And these stage-to-screen adaptations often stumble just in the sense that they can feel too stagey. They can feel way too meant for the stage. They don't go cinematic enough. So I think that the big risk with Is God Is just, is this going to feel like a movie or is this going to feel like a play that was filmed? Number 63 is I Play Rocky, the new film from Peter Farrelly, director of Green Book and one of the Farrelly brothers responsible for movie 43. So there's a big variance of what this movie could be. This is a biopic about the filming of Rocky and what Sylvester Stallone went through to get that movie made. It is also an unauthorized biopic. Sylvester Stallone says that he had nothing to do with the filming of it and just kind of hopes that it went well. So you've got your pros and cons there. It sounds like something that could be really baity. It's also coming from Peter Farrelly, a filmmaker that we know critics are going to try to smash into oblivion before they let him get another award under his name. We saw that with The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Because critics saw themselves as partially responsible for allowing him to go on and win Best Picture, I think that they kind of purposefully were extra harsh to The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Is that going to carry over to I Play Rocky? We'll have to see. I mean, it is a beloved film that's being taken on, a beloved part of film history, and it is unauthorized. There's no participation of Sylvester Stallone, and I think that could rub people the wrong way. We'll have to see. Again, this is another Amazon MGM movie. They're shit at this anyways, so we probably don't have to even think about these questions. Number 64, A24 has the new film from Annie Baker, one of my favorite debuts of the past couple of years. Janet Planet was an astounding piece of indie filmmaking, and she's back with Ancient History. I don't know a ton about the premise of this film. All I know is Annie Baker, and she could have a Celine Song moment. She could have a moment of being a playwright who's transitioned to the screen and just clicks. But that said, Annie Baker is known for her pregnant pauses and the weight of the silences and the subtlety behind every single word. I mean, she won the Pulitzer Prize for The Flick, which is one of the most subtle pieces of theater that I've ever experienced. And Janet Planet is every bit as subtle and measured. And I feel like Ancient History will be too. And that's why I have it low down this list. Is it going to be an Oscar thing? I would say probably not, but it's definitely something that is worth considering on the level of will this be a major indie player later on the year? I'd say so. I think that this could, like I mentioned with another thing earlier, this could kind of fit The Mastermind type of film, which critics love, but it's just from a filmmaker that is inherently not Oscar friendly. Number 65, If Love Should Die. If Love Should Die is the new film by Mia Hansen-Løve. She made Bergman Island, she made Eden, which is a great film about Daft Punk. Mia Hansen-Løve is one of those Cannes favorites. She's just one of those people that kind of shows up at Cannes every year, makes something really sweet that does well on the festival circuit, and then doesn't really stick the landing when it comes to an American release. If Love Should Die sounds like one of her most awardsy films that she's made so far. It's about an English philosopher, Mary Wollstonecraft, who lived in France very briefly at the start of the French Revolution. And it's about that time period in this philosopher's life. This is another one we're going to have to see. Does it show up at Cannes in competition? Does this win awards at Cannes? And if so, then we have to consider it in the Oscar conversation for sure. Number 66, Flowervale Street. This is coming from David Robert Mitchell, the filmmaker behind Under the Silver Lake, It Follows. And this one, coming from Warner Brothers, produced by Bad Robot. Flowervale Street sounds like it could be a Secret Cloverfield movie, and if it is a Secret Cloverfield movie, then it doesn't belong on this list. Flowervale Street stars Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor. There is not a lot of details around this one, other than David Robert Mitchell has made a original sci-fi movie that is kept very under wraps. I love David Robert Mitchell. I think that he has an awards movie in him. Will it be Flowervale Street? I don't know that until I know a little bit more about the movie. From a distance, again, it's giving Cloverfield. Number 67, Whitney Springs, the new Trey Parker, Kendrick Lamar movie, was very high on last year's list. It's got a great premise to it. A young black man who, while working at a slavery reenactment museum, learns that his white girlfriend's ancestors once were the slave owners that owned his ancestors. It's a hot button topic comedy with a lot of visual effects, apparently. Some of the deepfake technology that the South Park guys used on Kendrick Lamar's music video for The Heart Part 5 is being implemented here. This is just sounding like it could be a big film in a way. I mean, Kendrick Lamar is the zeitgeist. He had Not Like Us. God damn, this would have been so big if this came right off the bat of Not Like Us. He's likely to win the Grammy for GNX this year. I mean, this is a big moment in general for Kendrick Lamar. It's also a big moment in general for the South Park guys. Matt Stone and Trey Parker have not had as big of a season for South Park as they have with this one. They really went full force on targeting Trump, and they have really found the rewards of the audience again. I've talked to people who never in a million years would have watched South Park, who are all over watching it every single week. My dad's highbrow, like artist friends who are all talking about, oh, have you been watching the latest South Park season? It's not a sentence I ever would have expected to hear from the same people who like go to see art house films at the Plaza Theater. But it's getting that audience, and it's possible that Trey Parker, Matt Stone, Kendrick Lamar could be the combo that's needed. But that said, this thing has been having post-production issue after issue after issue. It was supposed to come out last year in July, and it's just been pushed back. They were going to do a March release this year, and then Kendrick Lamar demanded reshoots. It just sounds messy. While I want to have it a lot higher, I just feel like maybe the struggles that this is having in post-production are indicative of the product. I'm still looking forward to this like nothing else because I love South Park and I love Kendrick Lamar. Is this going to be the Oscar contender that I thought it was? No, I don't think so. But never say never. Number 68. Another Brazil mention here. We've got the new film from Fernando Meirelles, the filmmaker behind City of God. He has a new film coming from Netflix called Here Comes the Flood. This is a heist movie starring Denzel Washington and Robert Pattinson about three people who get caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse. I believe it's a bank security guard, a bank robber, and just a regular Joe Schmo who gets stuck in the bank during the heist. This is another one like Ben Affleck Animals. Gee, I'm really feeling like I put Ben Affleck's Animals too high up. This is another one that feels like it's meant for the Netflix top 10, not the Oscars top 10. This seems like a highly entertaining Netflix action movie that is not meant to be really more than that highly entertaining Netflix action movie. Number 69 is Her Private Hell by Nicholas Winding Refn. Nicholas Winding Refn comes back to film after a couple of mini-series that he released. Sort of a polarizing filmmaker. He goes back and forth between making stuff like Drive and stuff like Only God Forgives and The Neon Demon. And now Her Private Hell is likely to play at the Cannes Film Festival. He is back in the world of film. The question is just, is this going to have enough substance to it? And has the industry kind of moved past the moment that he created with that stylish flair in Drive? Neon has this one. It stars Charles Melton and Sophie Thatcher. And really all we know about it is it takes place in Tokyo, and it's a violent, hyper-stylistic movie in the same way that Only God Forgives and The Neon Demon were. Yeah, the fact that this is set in Tokyo is giving me a lot of Only God Forgives feelings, which is not the best sign out there. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Again, if this plays at Cannes and does massive things, then absolutely it could be a thing. Again, Neon has it, and they are good at Cannes. They're good at Cannes. But what I'm getting from this one, this feels more like alpha than it is sentimental value. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. Number 70 is The Unknown, another Neon film, and this is coming from Arthur Harari, who is married to Justine Triet, was Oscar winning for the screenplay of Anatomy of a Fall, which he co-wrote with Justine Triet. Arthur Harari is making his next directorial film starring Léa Seydoux. There are no plot details. And really, all I have to go off of this one is that he was part of the team behind Anatomy of a Fall. This is likely to play Cannes competition as well. Again, Neon has it, but just like the title, this is a big unknown. We don't know much about this one, and I feel like I would be jumping the gun a little bit to put this higher because I think that Justine Triet's success with the Oscars was a fluke. I don't think that her films are going to be major contenders going forward. The same way that I feel about Brady Corbet and Mona Fastvold. I think that they made the right movie with The Brutalist to break through. I don't think that means that they are always going to be in the conversation. Proven right this year with The Testament of Anne Lee, which really didn't do anything that people thought it might after The Brutalist last year. Anatomy of a Fall, I think, sets the expectations that Justine Triet and Arthur Harari are going to be those big contenders year in, year out. I don't necessarily feel that way. I sort of feel like they're going to go back to being very good French filmmakers that If they make something that is exceptional, that is undeniable, that wins the palm, maybe they can get back into the conversation for the Oscars. I just don't think that's the reason that they make movies. Number 71, Merry Christmas. It's Ebenezer, A Christmas Carol, the new Ty West version of A Christmas Carol. Ty West coming off of his X trilogy starring Mia Goth, X, Pearl, Maxine. Those three movies did incredibly well with audiences, and people, just horror enthusiasts, loved those. And he's doing a horror adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but not a horror adaptation in the way of like, oh, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, just a version of A Christmas Carol that leans much deeper into the ghost story elements of it. It's going to still be A Christmas Carol, but just one that isn't afraid to scare the shit out of the kids in the audience. This does star Johnny Depp in the role of Ebenezer Scrooge, and I don't care about seeing him on my screen anymore. I don't want it. It's not great casting. I feel like, and this is outside of all of the trial stuff with Johnny Depp, I feel like he's just lost his charisma. And so while I'm really excited to see what Ty West does with A Christmas Carol and with the more ghostly elements of Dickens, Johnny Depp is just not good casting for many reasons. Number 72, going back to Sundance, we've got Wicker. Wicker, I hardly know her. This is a film starring Olivia Colman as a basket weaver who attempts to weave a husband for herself. It sounds strange and unconventional, and Olivia Colman is always someone that I'm watching out for. It also stars Alexander Skarsgård, presumably as the wicker husband that she makes for herself. This would not be on the list if it was not for Olivia Colman in the lead role. This sounds like it could be a perfect role for her, and if this just lands the right level of weirdness, like think Swiss Army Man, I could see this be potentially a really big contender and one that is worth watching out for at Sundance and for the year. Number 73, The Devil Wears Prada 2. The first Devil Wears Prada film was surprisingly successful at the Oscars. Meryl Streep got a Best Actress nomination for this, let's not forget that, as well as some craft nominations. And I think at minimum, we're going to be talking about this for Best Costumes for the rest of the year. I don't think that Meryl Streep can pull a repeat nomination for this, but again, stranger things have happened, and Meryl has kind of been out of the game for a little bit. Her return to the role of Miranda Priestley could be big. This could also just be a bit of a cash grab, like a nostalgia play, and I think that is why this is so low. A sequel to The Devil Wears Prada feels like it should be higher up, but it's feeling like this is just... they're coming because they can tell there's money in that. 74, A Place in Hell. A Place in Hell is the new film by Chloe Dumont, who just did Fair Play, which was purchased for a shit ton by Netflix out of Sundance. And this is seemingly a very similar film. It stars Michelle Williams, Daisy Edgar Jones, and it's a legal thriller at a high-profile law firm. And while Fair Play was sort of this tense sexual thriller that took place in the world of Wall Street investments, this seems to be sort of a similar type of tense game of wits. Chloe Dumont, I think, is really good at making films set in this high-stakes business environment. I feel like Fair Play, Netflix gave it a push and it didn't really connect. We're going to see if Neon can juggle this. This doesn't feel like a Neon Cannes contender, and I feel like what we've been seeing with Neon is if it doesn't go to Cannes, they don't give a shit about it. Number 75 is Reed Morano's Charlie Kaufman screenplay, The Memory Police. Reed Morano typically has worked in TV. She hasn't really made a splash in feature filmmaking yet. And potentially working with a sci-fi Charlie Kaufman script and a performance from Lily Gladstone in one of the lead roles could be exactly what's needed. Granted, this is a film that I haven't been able to hear much about the state that this is in. Is it in post-production, pre-production, development? Have they shot it? I don't know. This was included on last year's list, and it very well could be included on next year's list. Maybe this film's just in development hell. It sounds like something that could be really special, because I love Charlie Kaufman, and you know I'm going to go all out for anything that he does. But at the same time, I feel like if this was one of his best scripts, he would be directing it. Number 76 is Burning Rainbow Farm. This is from Australian filmmaker Justin Kurzel, who did Nitram a few years ago. Burning Rainbow Farm is about two lesbian pot activists who basically, I believe, participated in like a 5-day standoff with the FBI over their right to protect their pot farm. It's like such a fun story of like these lesbian radicals. That's awesome. That's a great story. But this kind of feels like the type of movie like Dead Man's Wire, Gus Van Sant, that came out this past year. Just a film that is a really interesting story that doesn't really have a reason for the industry to grab onto it and say, this is it. This is our movie of the moment. This is our movie of right now. It just feels like one of those movies that is going to be really liked, but not beloved enough to stay in this type of conversation. Likely to play at Cannes. They really like Justin Kurzel. They play a lot of his work in the main competition there. But for now, it just seems like one of those oddity stories that is going to be liked, but not beloved. This feels like next year's Roofman, in a way. A surprise audience hit, but just isn't really taken seriously. Number 77, back to Sundance, Josephine Decker's new film, Chasing Summer. Josephine Decker is an independent filmmaker, best known for stuff like Madeline's Madeline and Shirley. She's a really interesting indie filmmaker. So far, she hasn't done anything that's shown an interest or feeling of wanting to be an award season. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think she's going to continue making really interesting, exciting films. And if one of them is beloved enough, it could be a big Oscar contender. Chasing Summer sounds like she is taking her own swing at the Sundance indie comedy style of film, the sort of coming-of-age movie about teenagers. This feels like it's right in the same genre of films as like The Kings of Summer and The Way, Way Back, that very classic Sundance indie darling. But of course, it's Josephine Decker, so it can't just be that. There's got to be more on her mind. So if the critics give this a push, pay attention to it. Number 78 is another critic sensation. This is the new film from Jane Schoenbrunn, Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. I saw the TV Glow, which was probably one of the biggest cult classic hits of the past few years. That movie found its audience. And Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma feels like it could find that exact same audience. Jane Schoenbrunn has described this film as Portrait of a Lady on Fire meets Friday the 13th. It's about a filmmaker who is invited to make the newest entry in a slasher movie series, who then sort of tries to inject their own queer sensibility into the work. So it's a meta filmmaking commentary on the slasher genre. It's also a deeply queer film and something that sort of plays with the tropes and cliches of this genre. Whatever Jane Schoenbrunn is cooking up is going to be one of the most intelligent and interesting films of the year, but does a meta slasher movie film industry commentary sound like something that could be big at the Oscars? Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. Even just that name. Like, that name is not an Oscar movie name. It sounds so awesome, and I feel like it's worth mentioning Jane Schoenbrunn's work, because at some point, they're gonna break through. At some point. But this one sounds a little bit too niche, a little bit too camp, a little bit too culty. And we're getting into the part of the list where really I could drop any of these, but there is always the possibility of something being a big contender that I just didn't expect. Something that feels like it should not be an Oscar movie that just is. This is the range of the list. Last year I had Sinners ranked at number 89. So this is the range of the list where it's very possible that something comes out of nowhere, surprises the hell out of me, and then ends up being an awards contender. And one of those movies is Clayface. It seems like what James Gunn is doing with the DCU is what Marvel pretended to do for years, which is hiring interesting filmmakers, giving them a genre to play in, and saying, make your action superhero movie, but make it in this genre. I mean, we had years of people saying, oh, Captain America the Winter Soldier isn't a superhero movie, it's a political thriller. Clayface, Mike Flanagan is writing the screenplay for this one, and it has been described as a superhero body horror movie. And coming from a writer like Mike Flanagan, I buy it. This could be a really interesting take on the superhero movie. I mean, Clayface is not a superhero. It's like a Batman villain, I believe. I don't know all the lore. Sorry, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. This is a character that you would not expect to see have a solo movie. And the fact that Mike Flanagan is writing it is really exciting. Mike Flanagan not directing this one. Neither is James Gunn. It's James Watkins that is directing this, the guy who just did the recent remake of Speak No Evil with James McAvoy. But still, you know, I think that this could be something special. We'll have to see. This is where the experiment of the DCU gets real. Are they actually making the sort of different genre takes that James Gunn has been saying that they're going to do? Or is it just superhero movie with a different set of makeup on? Number 80, Mother Mary, coming from A24. This is David Lowery's new film about pop stardom and the fashion industry, starring Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole, with music by Charlie XCX and Jack Antonoff. This is a movie that's been talked about for years. I think this is the third year that I've had it on this list. It has been in post-production hell, mostly because it seems like David Lowery just has no idea what this movie has become. Every interview with David Lowery seems to be him saying, God, I don't know what the hell this movie is. It's weird. It sounds like interesting mess. And don't get me wrong, I love an interesting mess film. I love sometimes those movies that are just disasters that no one knows what to make of. Sometimes those are my favorite movies. I love that shit. And so because I like David Lowery and because I like Anne Hathaway, I like Charlie XCX, I feel like this could be a really special film. The expectation that some people had that this was going to be David Lowery's awards breakout, I think that was misplaced. Let's just be excited for like a weird mess of a film. It's going to be interesting. Number 81 is Kogonada's new film, Z. Kogonada, who did Columbus, After Yang, and last year just kind of flopped with A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. This film is premiering at Sundance, and the Sundance program is referring to it as sort of a return to Kogonada's more independent roots. This is apparently feeling much more like After Yang than A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. It is a smaller film in both its approach and in its premise. It seems like this is just going to be a small indie darling sci-fi movie. If none of his other films, which have gotten good reviews, have been able to do it, then I'm not sure about this one, but it's definitely worth mentioning a new Kogonada film. Then 82, Wake of Umbra. This is a film from Mexican art house filmmaker Carlos Regadas, a filmmaker responsible for Post Tenebras Lux, Our Time. He's been, time and time again, critically beloved, but he makes art house weird, strange movies. He's on this list because so does Oliver Lasche, so does Masha Shalinsky, so does Kleber Mendonça Filho. There are so many filmmakers right now that seem like they would never be Oscar players that just make films good enough to be in that sort of conversation. So Wake of Umbra is one that if this wins big at Cannes, we're talking about it next year. 83, The Bride from Maggie Gyllenhaal. Now, with The Lost Daughter as her last film, you would expect me to have The Bride a little bit higher up. Same with the fact that it's another Frankenstein movie. Del Toro's Frankenstein is doing incredibly well right now, but The Bride looks like it's going for a musical, campy direction of this story, sort of more of a tribute to the classic monster movies rather than really serious, thoughtful adaptation of the book. This is another movie like Mother Mary. It seems like a delightful mess rather than a masterpiece. I'm excited for how strange this looks, but it does not read as Oscar movie. Then we have Pressure, a World War II film. Brendan Fraser, I believe, plays Dwight Eisenhower. It doesn't have a big filmmaker attached. I don't know about the casting of Brendan Fraser in this. It just feels like Oscar bait of years past. It doesn't feel like the type of thing that is connecting with me as this has to be big this year. This, if anything, Pressure feels like this upcoming year's Nuremberg. Then we have Ladies First. This is a British film coming from director Thea Sharrock, who previously did Wicked Little Letters with Olivia Colman. This stars Sacha Baron Cohen as a male chauvinist who wakes up suddenly in a world where the power structure has been flipped. It's no longer a patriarchal world. He wakes up in a matriarchal world, sort of the nightmare for this male chauvinist. This sounds like it could be very fun, very funny, interesting, and perhaps if it's really well done, this could be a bit of an audience breakout. Sounds like potentially a TIFF People's Choice Award contender. We've also got John Carney's new film, Power Ballad, another musical from the master of the modern pop rock musical. John Carney's responsible for Once, Sing Street, Begin Again. This could be a really fun entry into his list of lovely little musicals, and definitely an original song contender for next year. But with that said, there's nothing about this thing that's saying it could be bigger, it could be better than his films like Once or Sing Street. If those movies couldn't make it into Best Picture, I don't see why Power Ballad would, which seems like it tells the story of a feud between a rock star and a wedding singer. It stars Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas. I don't know. That to me sounds like it's going to be cute. It's going to be fun. It's not going to be the awards player that John Carney has been leading up to his whole career. This is not going to be bigger than Once. We also have Sweet Sick at number 87 coming from Searchlight. And this is from playwright Alice Birch, starring Cate Blanchett. And it tells the story of a woman with a strange gift to see what people most deeply need in their lives. I'm not familiar with Alice Birch or her work, and so it's possible this could be our yearly example of a playwright who just really becomes a filmmaker. The same way that, I mentioned earlier Celine Song, Annie Baker. It's also worth noting this is not based on a play. This is an original screenplay, which means that it's not going to run into the feeling of being too stagey. But again, I'm not familiar with Alice Birch or her work. I don't know what her style of play is, so I don't really have an accurate way of measuring what this will be like. I just know that the story doesn't sound like something that's immediately yes. So right now, it sounds like the third most likely Searchlight movie that we've got on the horizon. Number 88 is Out of This World, the new Albert Serra film, who just did Afternoons of Solitude, the bullfighting documentary, as well as Pacifiction and the Death of Louis XIV. He's a filmmaker who does really well with art house festivals, is a really hard filmmaker to parse, to get into. But again, if Oliver Lasche just got 5 shortlists, I can put Albert Serra on my list here at number 88. This seems to be his most ordinary film, his most commercial film. And if this is what Surratt was to Mimosas, then potentially we could see a big contender that plays at Cannes this year and goes on to surprise everyone. One of my most anticipated films of this year is number 89, The Roots Maneuver. And this is a new film from Rain Allen Miller, who did Rye Lane in 2023. Oh my God, I love Rye Lane. That is such a good date movie, such a good rom-com, an amazing directorial debut. This stars Toni Collette. It's a heist movie about a woman who steals an artifact using a wedding in a museum as a cover. It sounds like it could very possibly go into some cultural commentary, specifically on how the British Museum has stolen artifact after artifact after artifact from around the world. And again, Rain Allen Miller is just spectacular. She is such a stylish, cool filmmaker, and I can't wait to see if she continues what she did with Rye Lane in this one. But granted, this is Amazon MGM, and it's the first of, I think, 5 movies that I have from Amazon MGM that are heist movies, which are just meant to pad the content pile, because apparently heist movies do really well on Amazon Prime. Coming from A24, we have Chris Rock's new movie, Misty Green, which is about an actress who's looking to rebuild her career, who reconnects with a man from her past. Chris Rock is a really good filmmaker. If you haven't seen Top 5, check it out. That was a big surprise film for me when it came out back in 2015, I think. He's a really solid filmmaker. He's a solid writer, and it seems like this one is going to be a little bit more of a dramatic piece from him. We're definitely going to have to see how that plays out. It's not grabbing me with the story, but I do think Chris Rock is a filmmaker that is very much worth looking out for. 91, we've got Mayday from Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, the filmmakers behind Game Night, Dungeons and Dragons, two of the most inventive and playful action filmmakers nowadays. Mayday doesn't seem like a big movie in the sense of like critical success. Who would have expected Game Night to be that big? Who would have expected Dungeons and Dragons to be that big? They're good movies that I think people wrote off very early as just like slop pile. Mayday stars Ryan Reynolds and Kenneth Branagh. It tells a story of an American soldier crash landing behind enemy lines. And I'm curious to see if it's as serious as it sounds, or if they play much more in that comedy action genre that they've been doing with Game Night, with Dungeons and Dragons. Doesn't sound like this is going to be the one that does it for, this isn't going to be their everything ever all at once. You know, action comedy filmmakers getting a chance to do something really special and personal. This sounds kind of like content pile stuff. But I think that they can make this film very special just by virtue of them being very special filmmakers. Another film from Apple TV Plus is Weekend Warriors from director Stephen Chbosky, the man behind The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Dear Evan Hansen. Weekend Warriors, though, sounds deeply emotional. Sounds like the type of movie that's going to make you cry. It's going to be like a lovely watch with your parents. Plan B is producing this one. So you've got Dee Dee Gardner. Mark Wahlberg plays a father to an autistic son who is obsessed with basketball. And the two of them go on a cross-country road trip to see every single NBA team play in order for the son to decide on his favorite team. It's based on a German film. Originally, it was a story about soccer, but they've made the story about basketball, and it sounds, again, it's going to be a movie that makes people cry. Stephen Chbosky also was the guy that did the movie Wonder, and this sounds like it's going to be Wonder 2.0. Is that promising for Oscars? Probably not. But is it going to really connect with specific audiences and make them weep and be like their favorite movie of the year? Absolutely. This is a coworker movie. You know how we've got coworker music? Weekend Warriors, coworker movie. Coin it right now. Number 93 from Neon, we've got Boots Riley's I Love Boosters. And Boots, if you're watching this video, feel free to get into an argument about China in the comments. God, did y'all see that? Okay, if you haven't seen this, you gotta see Boots Riley went on like an insane comment rant. The amount of time this guy has, I don't understand how you can be making Hollywood movies and still have the time to get into a Reddit comment section and argue with someone about whether fucking Tibet is a legitimate state. Boots Riley wins an award for being the best filmmaker who is just so insufferable online. Anyways, I'm really excited for I Love Boosters. Sorry to Bother You is one of my favorite films of the past 10 years. That is a film that just blew me away. I never expected a movie to go to the places that one went to. Boots Riley is, I think his greatest detriment on the internet is his greatest virtue as an artist, which is that he does not give a shit. This is a guy who is unafraid of saying anything and will not let anyone stop him from saying exactly his piece. This seems to be a pro-shoplifting, anti-establishment, anti-corporation film. Demi Moore plays a ruthless CEO type. I can't wait for this one. But you remember earlier when I said that Matt Johnson would be an enemy to himself if he ever were to get into the Oscar conversation? Meet Boots Riley, This guy will single-handedly make sure he's never in the Oscar conversation for anything. Number 94, Jeremy Saulnier, the filmmaker behind Rebel Ridge and Green Room, is back with October. And this is an action thriller set at Halloween. Doesn't sound to me like the type of movie that's going to break through and be his moment on the big stage. But it sounds like a fun action thriller movie. I love Green Room. And some more fun movies that I don't see being big, but are worth mentioning. Number 95, Supergirl. Craig Gillespie did Cruella, did I, Tonya, and now he's doing Supergirl. And what I've heard about this one is that the comic that this is based on is surprisingly emotional and poignant and really, if they do justice to that storyline, perhaps this could become more than what it was destined to be as just like a superhero movie. And we know Craig Gillespie's got the sauce, he's got the style, he is fun to watch, he knows what he's doing to captivate an audience. Cruella did a lot better than it was ever supposed to. So maybe, just maybe, Craig Gillespie could have a moment with Supergirl. But I think we're gonna be waiting for another indie, more personal project for Craig Gillespie to get his due. And speaking of a filmmaker who is due for some love, Zach Cregger, man. I mean, last year I sat here, I put Weapons in my top 50, I think, and I said, yeah, I know this movie's slated to come out next January, but the buzz around this one is phenomenal, and it feels like they're not going to dump Weapons in January, and they didn't, and now Amy Madigan might win an Oscar for it. Zach Cregger's phenomenal, and he's got his new Resident Evil adaptation, which is reportedly going back to the feeling of the game rather than trying to adapt the game itself. I think we might have the first great video game movie on our hands with Resident Evil here. But that said, it is still a Resident Evil movie, and that's why it's number 96. Zach Cregger, I think, is going to have an Oscars moment as a horror filmmaker. But if it's not for Weapons, it sure as shit is not going to be for Resident Evil. Number 97, Werner Herzog is making a return to narrative filmmaking with Bucking Fastard. This stars the Mara sisters as twins and has been slated, rumored that this could be making a Cannes premiere. But a movie with that title, and Werner Herzog does not have the best track record in narrative as of late. You know, he's not making Aguirre, The Wrath of God, or Fitzcarraldo anymore. I'm not sure if Werner Herzog is really making the type of movies that could break through. And again, calling the movie Bucking Fastard, I don't see this even being a big critic player, but it could be interesting, and it's worth mentioning for sure. 98, Toy Story 5. They keep making these fucking movies, and they keep winning Best Animated Film at the Oscars. Is there going to be another animated Best Picture contender this year? No, there's not. That's why all the way down at 98 is the first animated film that I've talked about on this list. It's not going to happen for it. Harmonia comes from Guy Nativ, winner of the Oscar for Best Live Action Short Film for Skin. This one's coming from Bleecker Street, starring Carrie Coon and Lily James, and it's about a woman who joins a cult as her daughters desperately try to get her to leave. I don't know, I think Guy Nativ, he's a smart guy. He knows how to work the industry. The cult subject matter sounds interesting, but it seems like they're going in more of a horror direction with this one. Number 100, oh my god. There's still more to go, but we're gonna keep going through. Number 100 is How to Make a Killing, starring Glenn Powell. This is coming from A24. It is based on Kind Hearts and Coronets, classic dark comedy story about a guy learning that he's related to rich people and then killing them off one by one until he's the next in line for the family fortune. This is from John Patton Ford, the filmmaker behind Emily the Criminal, a very solid, cool indie movie. And How to Make a Killing, it's coming out in February. It seems like it's going to just be a throwaway indie at the beginning of the year, but who knows? I mean, this is a great story that it's based on. I love Kind Hearts and Coronets, also made into A Gentleman's Guide of Love and Murder. It could be a sleeper hit at the beginning of the year. Look, we've gone through 100 movies. I don't see an angle for really anything below this. I feel like I shouldn't have even gone into as much detail as I went into on some of the ones that I just talked about. So instead, you can just look at what's on this list, and if any of these becomes a big contender, I'd be very surprised. But all of these sound really interesting. I mean, let's briefly shout out a few of them. Ray Gun. Brad Bird has been wanting to make this movie for years. He's finally getting his animated film he's been working on since the early 90s. Netflix is doing it. Good for you, Brad Bird. I mean, he pitched this movie to Pixar, and they said, no, let's do The Incredibles instead. He's been trying to make this movie for years, and he finally has it. So that's so exciting. We've also got Wildwood coming out. This is the new Laika film. For some reason, doesn't have distribution yet, which is crazy. I mean, Laika being out there, they should be getting all the money to do whatever the hell they want. They're Laika. The Sheep Detectives I have at 108, which sounds really fun. I think they just released some photos from it. It's CGI sheep trying to solve the murder of their shepherd. That sounds fun as hell, and Craig Mazin from Chernobyl wrote the screenplay for it. I'm really excited for Masters of the Universe. This is the new He-Man movie. And speaking of Laika, Travis Knight of Kubo and the Two Strings, I think he's also doing Wildwood. He's directing Masters of the Universe. I'm really personally looking forward to Dylan Meyer's directorial debut, The Wrong Girls, which was written by Kristen Stewart, stars Kristen Stewart and Seth Rogen. It's being described as a stoner girl comedy, and Kristen Stewart, just having done The Chronology of Water, shows that she is a filmmaker, a writer, a director with some real vision. Now, she's not directing this one, but she did the screenplay, and she's got a cinematic mind. There are so many films to look forward to in this upcoming year, and unfortunately, only 10 of them can get an Oscar for Best Picture nomination. Now, are those 10 gonna be in the 131 that I mentioned today? I think a good deal of them are, and regardless, this is one of the most exciting times of the year. I can't wait to see these movies, but there's something pure about sitting here right now and just thinking about what amazing things could be in store ahead. But with that said, we're going to go back to 2025 and focus on that until the Oscars. This is the only time I'm going to be talking about these movies until after this year's Academy Awards. So stay tuned. We also have so many more things coming out in this coming week or two. We have a couple of top 10 lists, and of course, final Oscar nomination predictions will be coming soon, as well as Critics' Choice, Golden Globes. This never stops. It never ends. Oh my God, there's so much going on. But thank you for spending however many hours this has been with me. I'm exhausted. I'm losing my mind. But thanks for listening to me yap about next year's movies. And as always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.